Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the March 23rd, 2021 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Tonight we have a public hearing and a general meeting. I am in room 213 in Town Hall, and we are also on having a virtual meeting, GoToMeeting via GoToMeeting. As per the governor's order. Jeremy Ginsburg, the planning zoning director, will be here in a minute. He's just dealing with another person that came live to our meeting, but because we're in a small room with only computers, he has to redirect them. So without further delay, first item on the agenda is a continuation of public hearing regarding business site plan application number 194H, special permit Felix F. Callari, Inc., doing DBA BMW of Darien, 136-140 Ledge Road. This is, I think, our third night of hearings for this application. It is a proposal to raise a building in the back, raise part of the main building in the front, and rebuild a building in the back. I think we have some new submissions to the application from the applicant, and maybe something else has come in. The applicant's being represented by Weiler Gleason. Where's Weiler? There he is. So Weiler, tonight, I think the goal is to finish your presentation, if any. Listen to what else we had. I think we just did get something from a neighboring person, and then hopefully close the hearing tonight. Is that your understanding too?
That's my understanding. My understanding is that the neighbors spoke at the last hearing, and because the ARB had not completed and filed its report, we held it open to receive that and give us an opportunity to respond to the comments of the ARB. That report was received yesterday. We're prepared to address those concerns that they expressed in our presentation tonight, and to supplement, we filed a 17-page rebuttal to the neighbor comments, which each of the commissioners should have received. We also provided copies of that to council for the neighbors, so I think the neighbors have seen it. I did receive from Jeremy an email that was posted this afternoon from Ann Baldwin, one of the neighbors, and at 7:16, Jackie Kaufman, the neighbor's attorney, sent a letter from La Greca Appraisal Services, which I am prepared to address. I do note that that was 14 minutes before this hearing commenced, and that we have been at this for close to 3 years with Jackie and the neighbors aware of this application for well over 2 years. And it is surprising to me that this would be arriving 14 minutes before the last hearing. And I note that it's an expert's or an appraisal from a purported expert. We don't have his CV, but it's intended to make a claim that the presence or our proposal will have an impact on the neighbor's property values, and the report doesn't say that. It says it rejects the various conclusions of our experts as to noise and traffic, and says notwithstanding those, they could still have an impact, and therefore, in his opinion, this proposal can, I use the word can, I'm quoting directly from his report, can have a negative impact. It is not a report that says it will have a negative impact.
Okay.
I believe this is of no probative value, and I believe you should disregard it.
Okay. Kara Gately, you have something to say at the beginning here?
I actually have some questions before Wilder gets started, just based on what Attorney Gleason has stated, and I just want a clear factual record. So I heard that ARB issued a final report. Do we have that report?
ARB sent in a letter Today? Yesterday?
yesterday afternoon.
We have that.
Yes.
When did I receive that?
I don't know, Karen. I have no idea.
I can address these comments. First of all, the letter from the Architectural Review Board came in on Monday afternoon. It's my belief. The
Return.
ARB letter was emailed out to all commission members. It is not a final letter from the ARB. They've asked for some additional clarifications and changes to the plan, and indicated in their letter that once those issues are addressed by the applicant, they would be willing to issue a favorable report.
Okay, so it's a letter, not a final report. Yes, Fred?
Correct.
Okay. And then we have Wilder's 17-page letter in response to various things, correct? That's the March 18th letter?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then the Jackie Kaufman letter and presentation or report from their expert on behalf of the neighbors. I'm gleaning from the timing that Attorney Gleason just stated for the record, which was 7:16 p.m. The commission has not received that. Is that correct?
That's correct. The commission has not yet received that. We just received that from Jackie Kaufman.
And when is this hearing supposed to close?
Right.
I'm sorry?
Tonight.
How can we do that when we haven't had ample time?
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. 6 people on the commission.
Where is this letter from Attorney Kaufman and her expert, or the expert representing the neighbors? Can I have it?
Sure. Somebody's email. Can you send it to her?
All the information.
We'll see what happens, Kara.
I don't know
Okay.
what that.
It happened, if we were in a real meeting, Wilder Gleason would come up and give us 7 of these. We're not in,
Repeat that. If we were in a real meeting?
if we were in a meeting that was in person, in town
Yeah.
hall, Wilder would say, here, I just wrote this letter, and give it to everybody.
Right, but
Okay.
I don't have it, correct?
He's gonna email it to you right now.
But it's not Jackie Kaufman.
I'm sorry?
But isn't it a letter written by Jackie Kaufman on behalf of the
No.
neighbor?
No,
But-
No.
it's a letter from an appraiser
Mhm.
that Jackie solicited, I assume, and has forwarded to Jeremy, and she copied me on that. And that was emailed at 7:17 this evening.
I should clarify one thing here. Wilder's correct that her latest correspondence was submitted 15 minutes ago from this appraiser. However, in your packets, there is a separate letter or correspondence from Attorney Kaufman dated March 9th. That
Okay,
was included in your packets. That was a letter to
ARB.
the ARB with the Planning and Zoning Commission copied on that letter.
Are they substantially the same as the letter that was emailed this evening?
No,
No, it's totally different.
It's totally different, correct?
Let's just go through the process and maybe Jackie Kaufman will bring in a letter.
Well, can I see the letter? Can you email it to me?
It's getting emailed to you, Kara. I said that already.
Steve, no, you said, let's
Okay.
see how it goes, actually.
Yeah, let's see when it's addressed to
Let's see how
Jackie
it goes.
Kaufman, she can present it. You'll get it, Kara. If you just let the process go, it'll go, okay?
If you can stop yelling at me and being aggressive, that would be appreciated. Thanks.
Kara, it's not proper protocol. That's not how we handle meetings, okay?
When information is submitted to the record and supposed to be considered as part of the public hearing, the commissioner should have it.
And I will take care of it, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jeez. Okay,
Sorry, what did you just say?
I said, hello.
You said, I think you used a profanity, but okay.
I did not use,
Thank you.
okay. So, Wilder, you You want to explain your letter to us, Wiley, that you submitted the 17 pages? Do you want to walk through that at all?
I don't want to walk through that. I see you guys have had a chance to look at it. I will include it in my summation. I'll hit the high points. I don't want to go through everything in that. It's just, I felt it was important to make the record clear and submit that to you so you had a chance to read it. My letter addressed most of the neighbor concerns. The most important legal one was Jackie Kaufman's claim that the ramp and structure was a structure and part of the service building and therefore required to meet setbacks. You may recall that David Keating, she raised that issue the night of the hearing, and David, or very close to the night of the hearing, I think the day of the hearing, and David Keating provided a memo which was available that night on the 2nd, indicating that he disagreed with her assertion that it required that the ramp and driveway needed to meet setbacks. And my letter had a memorandum supplementing that and explaining why, under the regulations, it was not required to meet setbacks. And so that was the most important thing. I will add that in my submission, I did not include an exhibit ZZ, which my traffic expert had asked to be included as part of his testimony. The letter referenced exhibit ZZ, and then I realized it did not include it, so I submitted that this afternoon, and Fred got that, and I copied Jackie Kaufman on it, and I was advised it was posted to the website. That was part of the letter. It basically was an exhibit that showed how the car wash had moved from its current location to the proposed location. It was not essential to what we submitted, but it supplemented the claim that the moving of the car wash would reduce noise to the neighbors, which is the conclusion of our sound expert. The main, I'm sorry?
Okay. The other thing I want you to explain just again is you have an exhibit C to us and then the exhibit E at the end of your letter?
I'm sorry, there was an exhibit C, yes. That's my memo supporting Dave Keating's conclusion that the structure is not to be required to meet setbacks.
Right.
And there
And then
is,
what's exhibit E as in Edward?
I'm sorry?
What's exhibit E as in Edward? That's what you said that you already did to address ARB's concerns?
No, that was, there's an exhibit ZZ, but exhibit E was the summary. Exhibit ZE was the summary of changes we made and the stipulations that we're willing to agree to or we feel would be appropriate if you were to approve this.
Okay.
So that was exhibit E. Now there was an exhibit that I submitted this afternoon that was entitled ZZ, and that was supposed to supplement the testimony concerning traffic. And it's referenced in my letter on page 2, I believe. Yeah, page two, the third paragraph, where it says there's an exhibit. And it's basically highlighting how the car wash was moved from its current location to its former location to, it's proposed to be moved further from the condos. In any event, rather than rehash my letter, I would like to just say the biggest concern that we have here is the rooftop parking and its presence next to the neighbors. And during her presentation, Attorney Kaufman suggested that we had offered no comfort to the neighbors other than the fact that the rooftop parking would primarily be used by service employees. And that was a great concern because you could drive a truck through that commitment. It could change, it could reverse. And when I discussed this with Jackie, several weeks prior to a week or so prior to the March 2nd hearing, I suggested she provide me with a stipulation that would work for her neighbors. I have yet to receive that. And in fact, the facts are that this is a service building that will house over 40 employees. It has 35 parking spaces on top of it. It's logical that the employees are going to park on top. That's what we anticipate. That's what we committed to. We don't want to say it will be exclusively used by the service employees because things change. And there may be occasions when inventory cars are parked up there or service vehicles are parked up there. And that shouldn't bother anyone because how would you craft a resolution that says you can't put, it just doesn't make sense. How are you going to enforce something that says only service employees can park up there? How are the neighbors going to know there's a problem and it's not only service employees? So it just makes sense to accept our representation that it's logical that service employees will use the rooftop parking, and that is what is likely to happen. And we're committing to doing that. So, and I don't think P&Z staff want to try and determine whether 33 of the rooftop vehicles are service employees and 2 of them are inventory or 2 of them are service. 33 are being used by employees and the rest are being used by something else. It just doesn't make sense. So on our formal rebuttal tonight, I'd like first to focus on the primary area of focus. Craig, could you share your screen? We're talking primarily about the service area of the parking of the facility. This is the area that's not accessible to customers. And
Hey,
so,
Father, can I stop you for a half a second? It's just a really quick comment. I'm looking at your Exhibit E again with the stipulations and the other. Is it still true that there's a $12,000 payment for bushes that are going to the that's going to the Middlesex Commons?
what we have committed to do is to pay Middlesex Commons landscaper to install the arborvitae that we proposed on their property with their permission. And the idea is they take care of it on their property. We will take care of the landscaping on our property.
So that's number 5, agreed to pay to plant.
Yes, we've agreed to pay the plant. And I will review that in detail as part of the closing. So Steve, we will definitely do that. Okay.
Okay.
So in the screen before you, you can see that, Craig, if you could use your cursor and point out the area of the front of the current building that is accessible and where the gate is near the parts department. So it's right there. There's a gate right there that prevents customers from accessing the rear of the BMW property. And we will have a similar gate in our new facility so that the area of greatest concern for the condos is, as our understanding, everything behind this line in the back, and particularly the change from the existing service building, which is smaller, to a new service building. And with that in mind, I'd like to ask Katie Haas and Mike Kozlowski, our landscaper and architect, and Martin Schiff, our noise expert or acoustic expert, to address the ARB comments. And Kara, I regret that you haven't had a chance to see them, but if you got an email that shows them now, you may want to pull it up. And I think Katie and Mike and Martin should be able to address all of the specific recommendations that they made in their report of yesterday afternoon. So Katie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you, Craig. And Katie, if you could speak to it.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Katie Haas. I am representing William Kenny Associates, an ecological and landscape architecture firm this evening. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. Can everybody see, everyone see my screen? I should be all set. Okay. So there were 3 distinct comments from the ARB regarding the landscape plans. We worked on the planting plan as well as the lighting plan for this project. One of the questions was that to include some additional diversity in tree selections to supplement the green giant arborvitaes. Furthermore, the green giants are not our recommended screening tree in this case. This comment is in reference to the screening trees that we had proposed to the north of the proposed service building as well as to the east of the proposed service building. Through meetings with the condo representatives as well as their landscaper, it was discussed that arborvitae screening was preferred. An existing screen of arborvitae is already on the condo's property and provides a good screen of the transfer station. If you see my cursor, there's an existing arborvitae screen located right here, and it wraps around up to the north. We agree with Middlesex Commons that green giant arborvitaes are appropriate trees for this location. In response to ARB comments regarding the arborvitae screening trees, we did include a row of Norway spruce that extends the proposed screening trees the entirety of the northern property boundary. As you can see here, we have arborvitaes along the northern and then eastern sides of the service building, as well as spruce trees along the northern side, northwestern side. Another question that was raised in the ARB letter was to replace the dogwood trees at the front entrance for alternate species on the Darien tree list and avoid planting 2 species of the same kind next to one another. Our original plan that we submitted to the ARB included 3 dogwood trees along Ledge Road in front of the man-made stormwater wetland located right here. These 3 trees were initially proposed as flowering dogwood trees. Per the ARB comments, we replaced these trees with approved street trees in accordance with the Darien Commercial Design Guidelines. We have not shown dogwood trees on the plans since before January. And then the last question from the ARB that we received regarding landscaping was to outline a maintenance plan to ensure plantings remain healthy and trees will be replaced at equal size if necessary. BMW wants to see that the trees planted on their property survive. It's not only in the condo's interest, but it's an investment that BMW is making in their desire to work with their neighbors. If the commission would like us to provide a maintenance plan as part of the approval, we'd be pleased to do so. And as Wilder had mentioned, in addition to the investment of trees on BMW's property, BMW has agreed to pay Middlesex Commons landscaper to install additional arborvitae on the Middlesex Commons property. And on our planting plan, we're showing those arborvitae to be planted here, which was discussed at our meetings with the neighbor.
Can I interrupt 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
Don't we usually require the trees to have a full growing season? Or is that a bond, or how does that work?
Sometimes it's a bond, sometimes they can evaluate after 1 growing season. Most plantings like this would be guaranteed by the grower
For a year,
for
right?
at least a year. So in this case, they could do, as Ms. Haas mentioned, they could do a maintenance plan with and the commission could condition it on any trees that die have to be replaced.
Great. For how long? You want to go a year? You want to go a year and a half?
Or I would even go 3 years or 5 years in terms of if something dies, it needs to be replaced.
Okay.
I would go longer than that.
Okay. Did you hear what we were just talking about, Wilder?
Yeah, I mean, we're fine with, 5 years seems a little long to me. I don't know of any precedent for 5 years. It seems to me that if they're established after, Katie, trees get established after what, 2 years typically?
Yep, 2 to 3 years. Mhm.
So 3 years would seem reasonable at the far end. And I think we'd be fine with 2, but if you say 3, we'll live with that.
Okay, do we put dollar numbers in our resolutions for that?
Well, they would have to replace them with what's on the plan.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
fine.
I mean, we would just replace with a like-sized tree. So the tree
Alright.
would have grown, if it's an arborvitae, it's 2 feet a year roughly. And so we're committed to planting 20 to 22 foot arborvitae. These are big trees.
Right.
They're not cheap. So we're happy to do it. But we would want the neighbors to at least get a 1-year guarantee from their landscaper. And that would be agreeable to us.
Okay, and I'm sorry, what's the woman's name again?
Ms. Haas.
Ms. Haas, can I just go back to bullet point number 1?
Sure.
Is there a discrepancy between what the ARB wants and what the Middlesex Commons wants relative to these green giant abrevieties?
It was discussed that the ARB, the landscape architect on the ARB would prefer that no green giant arborvitaes are planted between the proposed service building and the Middlesex Commons. And that was per the Darien commercial design guidelines don't call for green giant arborvitaes. However,
But my question was,
green-
what does the Middlesex Commons want?
The answer is yes.
Middlesex,
Yes. The Middlesex Commons landscaper wants arborvitae. The landscape architect on the ARB does not like them, and they're not on the design guidelines that apply to the front and to the landscape of the parking lots, right,
for the
Katie?
parking. Thank you, Wilder. Yep. That was,
But
I was going to finish with that.
We do this as screening between the landlords, they have no recommended guideline trees for the category that we think these screening trees fall into. Katie, what portion of the design guidelines is that?
The landscape trees.
Yeah, we think these are landscape trees under the design guidelines, not parking lot trees or
Or streetscape trees.
trees in the front. So,
Jeremy, what's your view on this one, Jeremy?
Right. I can elaborate a little for the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Architecture Review Board has prepared commercial design guidelines, which deal with commercial areas, as Wilder mentioned. And there's certainly different types of recommendations for street trees, trees within parking lots. Of course, you wouldn't want a giant sequoia tree, for example, in the middle of a parking lot, or a tree that drops apples or pears onto cars in a parking lot. So there are different types of recommendations for different types of commercial areas. Certainly, there's nothing in the commercial guidelines that talks about screening, because it's rare that you would want in a downtown situation, for example, to screen properties from each other. So if you think of 1020 Post Road or Upper Crust Bagels, you want to be able to see the store down the street, to be able to walk to it, to be able to access it. It would be an unusual circumstance in a downtown situation to want to screen nearby neighbors. So in this case, the Architectural Review Board has pointed out correctly that green giant arborvitae are not typical for a downtown or a commercial situation. However, in this case, it's a little unusual. This is not an area that the public will ever see. It's not an area that the public will ever access. And the purpose of the green giant arborvitae is to benefit the adjoining properties and to grow a thick buffer to screen the commercial use from the multifamily use. So while the Architecture Review Board is technically correct that green giant arborvitae are not a typical planting for a commercial type area, the back of BMW is not a typical commercial area that you would see when strolling down Boston Post Road at, say, Post Corner Pizza or by Upper Crust Bagels. So it is different. I think the commission can certainly acknowledge that it's different, and the arborvitae are being planted as deference to the neighbors. And the height of the arborvitae has been deliberate in an effort to account for the grade changes. Is that correct, Mr. Gleason?
That's correct. And we are constructing a berm at the base of our ramp that will lift the 20-foot arborvitae 4 to 6 feet off of existing grade to give greater protection to the neighbors along the north side of our ramp, as well as planting, I think it's 8 20 to 22-foot arborvitae on the neighbor's property, which starts at elevation 58 and goes up to, say, elevation 62 or so on the eastern edge of that row of trees we're planting, each of which will provide significant screening to the neighbors. So if there's no further questions from the commission, I'd like to ask Mike Kozlowski to speak to the architectural issues or comments in the ARB letter.
Yep, so we just did the 3 bullet points on their landscaping. Now we're moving to architecture.
Good evening, everybody. Mike Kozlowski with Claris Design Build, one of the project architects for the project for BMW of Darien. I'm going to quickly just share my screen. Oops, sorry about that. Hold on one second. You guys can see the finished service finish board there on the screen.
Yes.
Okay.
3 points I just saw, I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt you, that was just being shown on the screen you just shared. Is that the letter we don't have?
This is not. This is the letter that was given. I'm sorry. Right
Previously,
here.
Steve just said, Chairman Albani said, we just went through the 3 points on architecture or 3 points on landscaping. Now we're going to architecture. That's the letter we don't have, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Kara.
Okay.
That's correct.
I mean, how are we supposed to comment and question on a letter that we
219.
don't have?
Earlier today at 2:19.
Kara,
Wait,
I'm being
Steve,
told it was emailed to you at 2:19 today.
it was emailed to me at 2:19 today.
Yes.
But actually, Jen Leahy just emailed it to me because it was not emailed to me previously.
Okay.
Thank you, Jen.
The first point from the Architects Review Board was to consider sound mitigation measures at the service building ramp and parking deck, such as a modified asphalt mix. From the very beginning, we have proposed this Black Beauty parking deck epoxy system. It's a hybrid system that is a 2-part system. The first part is an epoxy, which provides the required durability and weather protection from the elements. The other part is a full aggregate broadcast, meaning that after the epoxy is laid out and while it is still wet, aggregate material is thrown across the top of it. The result is once it dries and hardens, the aggregate makes the system have the same friction and qualities as asphalt. So we do feel that we have provided a sufficient sound mitigating material for the ramp and the parking deck. It's not about, it's all about the friction and how much aggregate you can get into it. Just much like if you were to run your fingers across asphalt, that's what this Black Beauty parking deck epoxy system would feel like. The second, and then to the next point, part number 2 of that point was also, I'm sorry, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but so this system is applied after the ramp is built and it reduces the friction, which reduces noise. And this is something that we did in response to neighbors' concerns about squealing tires on the ramp as cars go up and down, which is 85 trips a day, according to our traffic expert, John Canning. So.
No, wait a second. But this is I'm getting, hold on a second. Is sound an architecture review board issue?
No.
Okay, so it's not part of their purview.
they included, it did come up at the ARB meeting,
Right,
but
I get
and
it.
that was included in their letter.
Right, but it's not, their architecture, they're not sound.
Their architecture, lighting, landscaping. Yes.
Okay.
So we, yes, while you're correct, the concrete would be poured, that would cure. And then before the use of the ramp, we would have this epoxy finish. Like I said, it also weatherproofs it so that we can have a weather-tight building, much like a rubber roof on, protects the activities below. This epoxy system would protect the activities below the concrete parking deck and ramp. The second part of that comment was also consider painting or another architectural finish at the top portion of the concrete ramp and walls that is visible until trees mature. It is, so if we're looking here, this ramp here, until we get to the top of it, let me go down to the elevation, excuse me. This ramp right here, this concrete ramp, that will, most of it will be covered heavily by landscaping, even when the landscaping is first put in, because right here you could see the berm that Wilder was talking about, and the arborvitae will be planted on top of that. But we are planning on finishing it with a trowel and painting it, so it will be a finished concrete. It just won't be exposed like formed look concrete. So that, we believe, is going to satisfy that point as well. The second bullet point from the Architecture Review Board provides sufficient sound mitigation measures at the 2 HVAC screen walls on the service building. These are currently noted as TBD. Also select residential style materials for the exterior finish of these walls. If the mechanical specifications allow, consider a return on the screen wall back to the storage area to limit sound and visibility. So what they're talking about here on the parking deck is, because we can't really put any rooftop, HVAC systems on top of here, we are putting them on the parking deck. They are visibly hidden from the mansard roof all the way around. But we also have screening walls here and here that has a similar construction to what we are doing at the top of the ramp, meaning it is a heavy gauge cold form steel studs that will frame the wall. We will add bat insulation into the center of it. We will sheathe it with appropriate weatherproofing sheathing, and we are going to finish it with the solid Trespa material that we're using at the top of the ramp. So it will have a very wood-like texture. It will have we feel, a residential feel to it. And moreover, those walls actually won't really be seen, as we showed the ARB, with sightline sections that you won't see onto the roof deck, so those walls will not be seen. Now, that's as far as I could say what we could do with those walls. I'll let Martin, our acoustic engineer, kind of take over and speak to the acoustic nature of a wall that's constructed that way.
Thanks, Mike. And if you could just leave that section up, I think that illustrates it nicely. I'm Martin Schiff. I'm a principal at Lally Acoustical Consulting in New York, and we did the acoustical and noise mitigation design. I understand, there are still some concerns about noise on the ramp and on the roof deck and from the HVAC. And I just want the board to understand that these mitigation measures were carefully tailored to the site and to the residential neighbors. It's, everything has been set the maximum protection to the neighboring properties, from the solid materials that Mike just described to the precise heights of these walls and the extents of these walls, with the top floors of the neighboring buildings in mind. And you've seen some changes across the process to this end to maximize this noise mitigation, like going from fencing in certain areas to solid walls at the perimeter of the roof. The height of the mansard wall is now 10 feet above the deck to gain some additional sound mitigation there. And that's why, if you've reviewed our acoustic report, you've seen some of these parameters are memorialized in there so that we can make sure that the benefits that we've analyzed are realized when they build this. With the HVAC in mind specifically, these walls have been designed not only to reduce noise from these outdoor condensing units to what the code requires, the state noise ordinance, but well below the lowest background noise that we measured on site overnight, to the point that these walls will keep these air conditioning units from being audible at the residential properties. And again, that's a function of the height of the wall, the wall solid and how thick it is, and these materials that Mike's incorporated, which was all purposeful to make sure that these aren't an issue for anybody in the area.
Thank you, Martin. Are
One
there any
final,
are there any
go ahead,
questions?
Wilder. Sorry.
Are there any questions of Martin? Okay, thank you, Martin. Mike, if you'll continue, that'd be great.
Yep. Final point from the Architecture Review Board is consider architectural features at the mansard roof on the north elevation of the service building to break up the commercial nature of that span of roofing. Suggestions include faux dormers or sections of trespass wall to align with that design element at the top of the ramp. The service building roof line will be visible from the adjacent property, especially from late fall to early spring. Therefore, the aesthetics should be refined further. We have decided to be guided by you on this, the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, on which way to proceed. However, we do not feel it is necessary. As Martin just spoke to, this part of the project has evolved quite a bit from a fencing material on the exterior of the wall to a solid built-up wall with insulation to a mansard roof, which you can see in this section, and I will show you in rendering shortly. And it has been well documented by the Architecture Review Board. They complimented us at the end of the letter that, you know, we have proceeded very far actually to achieve not only this mansard roof look, but a very residential in nature. We simply feel the distance from the condos combined with the heavily landscaping that will be done that Katie has already spoken about. There will be no added benefit to have a couple faux dormers, especially since on one side we have about 100 feet of mansard roof and another is 50, and it's already broken up in the center with the trespass panels. And we do feel once the landscaping is fully grown in, all those architectural elements will not be seen. It is of our opinion, but like I said, we will lean on you for your discretion in this. Before I finish, I'll just quickly run through here and just show you some of the renderings to refresh your memory. We have a very residential style siding on the front end of the service building facing the BMW showroom. The rear of the building has more of this mansard looking roof, very residential in nature, very similar roof. It'll look similar to what the other projects we talked about two hearings ago, and the asphalt shingle roof of Whole Foods, their other neighbor. From back here, you can see the landscaping kind of peering over the top of the mansard roof that will block a majority of that roof. And you can see the trespass panel here in the corner here at the top of the ramp. Back here, these are again just computer renderings of the arborvitae grown in from different views on site. And I think Katie did a great job when she presented the landscaping, so I won't go too far into detail. Two meetings ago, she presented it, that you through the trees, you will not be able to really see the building that much. That is our rebuttal for our response to the architecture comments, the 3 comments, and I'll pass it back to Wilder.
Thank you, Mike. The ARB talks about the massing, and I want to point out that the Whole Foods building is 280 feet long along the condos, and our building is 100 feet shorter. And our building, as Mike pointed out, is broken up with the trespass paneling at the top of the ramp, which reduces the massing. The Whole Foods building is 25 feet from the condominium property line. The BMW service building is 32 feet, 12 feet further away. Based on our expert reports, our proposal will improve existing conditions for the condominiums. Traffic will be reduced from 700 trips a day, roughly, to less than 300. The noise, our expert, who's the only qualified person to speak about noise, will be reduced from current conditions in every way that it was analyzed. The proposed rooftop parking will be less than existing parking. The parked vehicle noise from doors closing and chirps from alarms will be less than what they can hear from the current flat lot parking. The rooftop HVAC has been pointed out will be less noise than the ambient background noise at all times. 24 hours a day, the ambient noise of the town transfer station and I-95 is greater than the noise from our HVAC that will hit the condominiums. The car wash and vacuum line noise is going to be reduced by 17 or 16 decibels. I think it was 16, Martin, it came on.
That's right, 16, yeah.
That is a very significant decrease because for every 10 decibel increase, I'm told by Martin, it's a doubling of the impact of the noise. Is that right, Martin?
That's correct. So a reduction by 16 decibels is less than half the amount of noise as they experience currently.
So though noise is definitely going down, and claims to the contrary are just based upon fear and not analysis. Lighting, existing impacts are going to be reduced. We've documented that. You can see the light sources. That won't happen in the future. All lights are below the height of the mansard roof on the rooftop parking. You won't be able to see them. Light currently migrates onto the condominium property from the BMW property. Our experts' reports and the photometrics we've submitted show that will cease. The closest lights you have now are 14 feet tall and they're located 2 feet from the condo property line. And under the new scenario, the light will be 32 feet from the property line of the condos. It'll be 8 feet off the ground, and it will be dark sky, full cutoff, LED, and it's going to be on dimmers. All of our lights are going to be on dimmers in the service area. None of them are on dimmers currently. All of that is a significant improvement, and there's nothing to say otherwise before you.
Well, did you mean timers or dimmers?
Dimmers. So it's not a timer, it's a motion sensor. So
Okay.
if there's no motion for a period of time, say 15 minutes, we're going to save money. We're going to save electricity. And that's a benefit to the neighbors. And these are individual motion sensors on each light fixture. These are expensive, but we're doing it because it works for the neighbors. So in lighting, all aspects are improving. Our landscaping, as we've documented, is going to be very robust and screen the condo properties' views of this service building substantially right at the beginning. And over time, when you get a 40-foot arborvitae hedge, they won't see a bit of this mansard roof. As the sections that we presented documented, the condos, even from their second floors, will not see the rooftop parking. So I'm not sure what the impacts are. So visual impacts are largely screened. They'll be completely screened in a number of years after it's built. And we show that there's no impact. So, and we're willing to install and pay for it. We're willing to pay to have arborvitae installed on the condo property line, which they requested and we're willing to do to mitigate impacts. So at this point, Craig, if you could pull up the summary of changes and stipulations. I'll just quickly review that and we'll be done.
Good. Marley, we're just going to open up to questions for the commission before you finish your final summation.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that. Craig, if you want to have questions now?
Unless you want to go over the stipulation.
Let me do the steps because I think that makes sense. So
Okay.
we have made numerous changes and this is not an exhaustive list. I can assure you other changes have been made. We originally proposed a solid board fence around the rooftop parking. We modified that to a structural wall. We then modified that to a mansard roof. So we've had 3 different proposals for the surround around the rooftop parking to mitigate impact on neighbors. We screened the HVAC equipment on the rooftop. We've agreed to plant those arborvitae on the condominium property. And by the way, in 2012, we removed the trees that were on the condominium property at their request and at no cost to them. So they created the gap that is there, or we created it at their request and at no cost to them. And now we're filling it in 9 years later. We increased our landscaping trees on the north side of the building from 10 to 12 feet to 20 to 22. We extended the landscaping along the entire north boundary and part of the east boundary of the service lot, increasing the size and the number of trees. We have modified the tree species. We've put the berm along the north side of the service building to elevate the landscaping and make it more effective when it's initially installed. We've redesigned the lighting plan to eliminate lighting impacts on the MCC property, as we've discussed. At the ARB's suggestion, we proposed solar panels on the second floor roof of the parts department. These are going to be a maximum of 15 inches above the roof and about 135 feet from the nearest MCC condo. So they'll be of minimal impact and none really. We moved the car wash location away from the condos, and then at the ARB suggestion, relocated them on the further back, where it now is going to, the noise from that will be partially screened by the second floor of the service building, reducing impacts on the condos, not only due to the moving it further away reduces noise, but now the service building, given its proposed location, will act as a screen to the noise from that car wash affecting neighbors. As indicated, we're going to install a special service on the ramp and rooftop parking to reduce noise from tires. All of these changes we've made. These are stipulations which we are happy to accept if there's an approval by P&Z. The mansard roof shall have a minimum elevation of 78 feet. Elevation, that's the elevation, and shall conform to the design in the architectural plans. This was something that was mentioned by Martin Schiff, our acoustic expert. Each lighting fixture in the service area shall be connected to a motion sensor which dims lights to 50% intensity after normal business hours when no motion is detected. The service building will be operational on the hours that were specified here. No major service of vehicles shall occur outside the service building. We currently do quick and clean services that take little time, like changing a light bulb, wiper blades, fuses, things like that. That will continue to occur outside the service building on occasion. Any replacement blowers that are installed in the car wash will generate less noise than the current blowers. We have really loud blowers now. When we relocate that equipment, we're going to evaluate and see if it makes sense to reduce it. We know the noise is getting very much lower, 16 decibels, as Martin indicated orally tonight and in his report, which is less than half of what they currently perceive at the condominiums. But we're also going to look to replace them with less noisy blowers. We're agreeing to limit the car wash hours as specified in F. The 8-foot tall acoustic wall screens on the north side of the equipment shall be installed as shown and maintained, no problem. The exhaust and fresh air systems of the service building will comply with the Connecticut and Darien noise requirements and noise standards, and will maintain the proposed landscaping on our property. We are not proposing to assume maintenance of landscaping on the condo property and don't think it would be appropriate for us to be required to do so. That's it. Now, I did want to briefly address this this report that Jackie submitted 14 minutes before this hearing started. We've been at this for 2+ years. Jackie's been involved for over a year, I believe. And they've had more than ample opportunity to get an expert to talk about impact. And we get this report at the 11th hour and 59th minute and almost 59th second. It was actually 11th hour and call it 43 minutes, okay, before this hearing is supposed to close. And the report doesn't say it will have an impact on condo values. It says it can. And the assumptions in this report are not honoring the expert testimony you have before you, which says noise is going to get reduced, visual impacts are being reduced, traffic is being reduced. And it ignores all those and says, despite what our experts say, which are the only qualified people to speak about them, there will be noise, there will be traffic, there will be other things. And by the way, that can have an impact on value. It doesn't say, even if there's going to be more noise, etc., it will have an impact. It says, I assume there will be noise and therefore there can be impact. It's not worth the paper it's written on. And you should disregard it.
Awesome.
So that's our rebuttal.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Weiler. Let's go around the horn with the commissioners. Jim Rand, you want to go first? You're the oldest gentleman. Any questions for Weiler or the applicant on this? What's new from?
Thank you.
Larry Warble, you're next to Jim. Any questions? There he is.
You know what? No, I think everybody has, there's been a lot of detail. Everyone's made their thoughts and positions very clear, and I don't think anything is ambiguous to me at all. So no questions.
Okay. Jan Leahy, any questions? Where's Jan?
No, I don't have any questions. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Great. Yep, got it. Kara Gailey, any questions?
My same question, do we have the newest expert report submitted by the neighbors via their attorney?
Which one? You mean the appraisal letter?
Yes, that was emailed out.
It was emailed out.
When was it emailed out?
When I got it at 7:17, 7:18. I'll double check.
All right, I will look again because I do not appear to have it.
Larry, do you have it? George?
I don't see it, no.
Yeah. I see it in an email from 7:44 p.m.
Oh, I do have that. Yeah, sorry, I do have that.
Larry's got it. George's got it.
I didn't get it this afternoon, but I got it at 7:04. Oh, it only
Yeah.
appeared. I know. Okay.
We got it after the meeting began.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
I
that's
cannot
me.
check emails while the meeting's in progress.
I agree with you 1,000%.
Okay. I mean, it's hard to, consider a rebuttal, which, was quite, interesting, without having the report. So I'll just leave it at that.
George Riley, any questions?
The only quick thing on my mind was about the ramp up. Is that a 90-degree turn to the north side? And is that something that, I don't know, can a fire truck do that if it had to get up there for a mechanic's car that's on fire, which I guess is
No.
unlikely?
Wilder, do you want me to take that?
Sure, Craig, go ahead.
So the design vehicle is a P-design vehicle, which is a 19-foot long passenger car, and it can make all the turns indicated on the site plan. So all the passenger cars can get up and down to the roof without issue. We ran that analysis. The fire marshal does not anticipate taking any emergency service apparatus to the roof. There is a fire-rated stair that has access to the roof. The fire personnel can walk up the ramp, and there's also a standpipe access on the roof, but there will be no fire service apparatus.
Fair enough.
And-
Okay, thank you.
You
In
can also
addition-
get a ladder truck to go over the
If-
top of it, right?
I'd
Yeah,
like
which
to-
they usually use for water application mostly. Yeah.
I would like to add that the fire marshal looked at the plan and approved it as having adequate access for emergency vehicles, including his, the large ladder truck. We have a design that accommodates the ladder truck without it having to turn around and back out, because we have an easement over the Whole Foods property, which allows it to just basically make a loop through the Whole Foods property or our property and then out the Whole Foods property. So,
Good.
I hope that answers your questions, George.
Okay, with that said, is there anybody in the general public that would like to speak to this application? Jackie Coppin's raising her hand. Welcome. Just state your name and affiliation for the record, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Jackie Kaufman. I'm an attorney with Carmody, Torrance, Sandeck, and Hennessy. I'm here tonight on behalf of Middlesex Commons. I see that several members of the community are also with us, and if I defer to them, they've been waiting patiently to speak, and I'm happy to speak after them if it pleases the commission, or I can start whatever your preference.
Sounds like somebody cares.
I'm
Who's that?
sorry, I was muted. Jackie, you raise your hand first. Please just go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank the commission for your time and dedication. I know it's the third night of this hearing, and for your consideration and respect that you've given to the Middlesex Commons community, as has the applicant throughout this process. As you know, we remain in opposition to the parking deck proposed on the roof of the service building. The mitigation efforts that have been made to the service building use, parking deck and roof aside, which we'll talk about more, are certainly commendable. We've appreciated all the time and effort that has gone into those, but issues still remain. And I want to remind you, I represent a large board. You know how I practice. I don't like to come to you with things last minute, but I represent a large community, many of which are in multiple places because of the public health crisis. And there are over 60 homeowners here. So we work together at the fastest pace that we possibly can. And I realize that that is not always convenient. And certainly if we were in person together, bringing these documents to you during the meeting would not be as challenging as it is if I could hand it to you physically and read. So I may read some things into the record if that helps. And I apologize for any, on behalf of the community, for any stress that it's caused the commission tonight. Certainly not my intention to do that. We bring you everything in good faith and to help make this the best project it can be in, so that we can have two neighbors that can live together. These are very unusual circumstances. We do not see these type of pairings very often in this community, in Darien, I should say, not meaning the Middlesex community. We don't often see intense commercial uses like this next to this condos, and there are continuously updated regulations, and we're all working toward the best living experience that we can have. I've not been involved in this for 3 years, as Mr. Gleason said. It's been about a year, and I'd say we've all been working together pretty well during that time. But it really is no surprise to the applicant or to you that the rooftop parking remains the biggest ongoing objection, because that has been a constant communication all along. We have continuously requested conditions, which we just received on the afternoon of the 18th, that we can respond to. Regarding the rooftop parking, it was always a hard no. And as we heard tonight, it's because the applicant needs flexibility. I don't disagree. We all need flexibility in life. But when we have a residential community next to an intense commercial operation, there need to be some senses of certainty so that quality of life remains. And the Middlesex community we didn't offer additional conditions regarding the rooftop parking because it's our position that it's incompatible with the special permit regulations and that it does not meet section 1005 A and B, which regards location, size of use, nature, and intensity of the operations involved. Subsection A requires it be in harmony with the district in which it's located. This is a permitted use. You allowed it by accepting the text change that you did over a year ago. Despite the objections that we raised at that time, and we're told this was the appropriate time to bring it. Well, we're here, and I can still say to you that it does not meet subsection B, location, nature, size, height, walls and fences, nature and extent of landscaping, which they have met. So we can disregard that part, but lighting signs, it shall not hinder or discourage the appropriate development, use or use of adjacent lands and buildings or impair the value thereof. And we have submitted a report to you tonight which opines to that. And I think that the ARB comments also speak to that subsection. And there are expert reports, and that's fine, but there are components. We are not saying the entire application, but there are components of this application, particularly the rooftop parking, that cannot meet that standard. And I think that even when you appeal to a sense of reason, it cannot meet that standard. Specifically, if we look to the March 22nd letter from the ARB, landscaping comments fine. I think that we're all good on that. Architecture, the sound mitigation measures to the service building ramp, those are an improvement. Providing sufficient sound mitigation measures around the HVAC, also that will be an improvement provided that they how they look, which and then consider architectural features at the mansard roof of the north elevation to break up the commercial nature of that span of roofing. The service building roof line will be visible from the adjacent property, especially from late fall to early spring. Therefore, aesthetics should be refined further. And this letter goes on to conclude that board members maintain the massing of the service building is too large for its location on site. And considering its proximity to the residential property, this is one of the main reasons for our focus on the service building's design and screening. So that those comments from one of your municipal boards of whose opinion you rely on in making your decision does not meet the standards of subsection 1005B. And I have submitted today a letter from an appraiser, Christopher LaGreca. His CV has been emailed to staff and also to Mr. Gleason, and it's dated March 23rd. And in the interest of time, I won't read this, but they do conclude that it can have negative impact on the property values and marketability for the residential condominiums. And this is important, and it does hold weight, and you should consider it. Number one, because it is an expert opinion. Number two, I know it is inconvenient timing for the applicant to read it and or to receive it, but it's when it was done. And he makes an important conclusion that the appraiser was unable, comps are very important for appraisers. The appraiser was unable to locate any auto dealerships and service properties within Fairfield County that currently have rooftop parking. This aspect of the proposed development does not conform to typical auto dealership and service properties in the area, especially when located in close proximity to residential properties. Therefore, it cannot be assumed that the use will have no negative impact on properties because there is no comp against which it can be compared. And quite honestly, within town, there is really no comparable properties as well, because this is a new concept in Darien. So while it may be that may be an appropriate use for your intense commercial zones, while it may be an appropriate use for a car dealership, the question for you to answer is it appropriate in this location, on this property, adjacent to the Middlesex Commons community, to which we conclude it's not, and also for those reasons, it's incompatible with Section 1005B. And I know that the applicant says this is just their fear talking. Certainly, no one likes change. It's one of the hardest things that, as a zoning commission, that you manage are neighbors' fears for changing community standards, and that's truth. That is truth. But there are very valid concerns here. They have been substantiated by Middlesex Commons. And again, no one in Darien has been asked to live next to a parking deck of this nature until now. So there's no comparable instance both in this community and beyond right now. So I ask that you consider that, and certainly you'll hear from some members of the community tonight. Several have sent in letters. I hope that those are included in your record and you read them. One came in today signed by well over 25 members of the Middlesex community. And I'd like to take a few minutes to respond to Mr. Gleason's comments. I did already talking about how this will not impact property values, not an industrial use. I did admit at the last meeting I misspoke by calling it industrial use, but I think we can all agree it is a very intense commercial use here, and one that in other communities is typically found in an industrial zone or former industrial zones. But again, it's really about the intensity of use here and how it's going to impact this community. On page 2 of Mr. Gleason's letter, he says there is no evidence to support their claims that traffic, noise, and lighting will adversely affect them. When we talk a little bit about traffic, it's not really about traffic, it's coming in and out. We're talking about the way that the internal traffic is in and around this service building is going to be operated and regulated. And certainly the noise from inside the building, and then the lighting. We understand this is a part of doing business, and there are conditions under 1006. You can put very strict conditions on the way that any approval, should you grant one, any conditions should you grant one, you can put on it. But and when we speak to the lighting, we're speaking to very specific things. And I've addressed those in ARB letters, in which I've copied you on, ways that they can be more properly managed. We hear that they will be dimmed. We feel they will be on timers. But there are 2 specific lighting issues that remain. One has to do with the glow around the rooftop parking. Obviously, as it gets dark early, that type of lighting would be important. If the rooftop parking is not approved, then that lighting may not be necessary, and that glow may not have the negative impact that we're perceiving it to have. And then there is a wall pack on the rear part of the building. So we're not talking about objecting to all of the lighting at all times that exists, but ways that it can be better managed. And specifically with regard to that wall pack on the back, I know it's supposed to be at a motion sensor and won't go off, but it's very high. We're told by people we've had review the plans that it can have a negative impact there, and we are reporting it to you. Expert aside, that needs to be looked at more closely. We don't feel that that is a necessary light. It can be lowered if lighting is needed there. We've talked about this. Mr. Gleason said we cannot put bollards down there. It needs to be where it is. I think there are other ways to manage that particular lighting. Just going through this here. The concerns that were raised in the exhibits, I'd just like to go through those quickly as well. Exhibit C refers to the location of the parking ramp. We still see it as a potential issue, but we respect the decision of your zoning enforcement officer. That is what it is, and it is just simply our job to read the plans closely and to seek those opinions. And I will say that, again, this is a new issue. When I read the regulations, it doesn't speak to ramps for parking decks because this is a new concept. So therefore, the only photos of ramps that are in setbacks that Mr. Gleason can provide to you in town are those which are ADA and handicap accessible ramps, and those are covered by several federal civil rights laws. So those are appropriate, and they are certainly not of the size and magnitude of a parking ramp, and they are not on a residential boundary either, nor do they manage cars in and out all day on a property line. So I don't think they're very comparable, but all of that aside, I think we have to respect the decision of the zoning enforcement officer. Oh, I'm sorry, I dropped a piece of paper here. Exhibit E, the changes made to address neighbor concerns. I think that these are, this is a helpful list to have, although some of them which were new and in response, I think, to lately, can't say I know how all of these look right now. Proposed solid board fence around the rooftop parking. I don't know if any of this has changed or will change based on ARB recommendations. Modified board fence to a structural wall, modified structural wall to a mansard roof. All of these things, right? We've seen these evolve, and it seems that ARB has recommended that they continue to evolve in our neighbors' interest to maintain a nice visual, and we appreciate that and all the efforts as it has evolved. Screening HVAC equipment, all of these things are good. 5, agree to pay to plant the giant green arborvitae. Today is the first day I am hearing of the monetary amount. We certainly find that the landscaping plan is acceptable. However, it says we would like to see a landscape maintenance agreement here to ensure that the plants on the applicant's side are maintained in a healthy, long-standing condition, and certainly would require the conditions that you spoke to earlier tonight about the certification of any plantings that are done on our property. Redesign lighting plan to eliminate any impacts on MCC property. I know that's the opinion of their expert, to which we do not agree, that there are still lights that they simply will not, modify. Proposed solar panels, again, we object to the height. We don't want to have to see that over the mansard roof. Perhaps that's something that continues to evolve based on ARB comments or based on your comments. We have, again, industrial sized solar panels here, or sorry, industrial commercial sized solar panels. And with so much effort to not have to see anything on the parking garage on behalf of the applicant and then have solar panels popping up. We don't dislike solar panels. Everyone supports solar energy, but it seems inconsistent with the other efforts, mitigation efforts that have been made. 13, will install a special surface on the ramp. Also, that is, everything's good. There's moving in the right direction. Although we don't want parking on the roof, so it could be irrelevant. The conditions that have been supported, we've had a chance to look at. I'd like to speak to you about conditions as well. I will, in the interest of time, email those to the board and just speak to them moderately now. The mansard, these are the ones that have been proposed by Mr. Gleason. The mansard roof screening, rooftop parking shelter. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you 1 second? We're looking to close the hearing tonight, so if you're going to email them to the board, you have to get it in before we close the hearing. So either you can speak to it.
I will do that. I will do that as part of my testimony to you now.
Okay. So we're not holding open the thing for an email to come in.
I'm not asking you to do that.
Thank you.
The mansard roof screening rooftop shall have a minimum elevation of 78. Each lighting fixture motion sensor, which dims to 50% intensity. I think that those should have any lighting and motion sensors should be attached to reasonable time conditions that are consistent with hours of operation. We've previously spoken about hours of operation here and why the service building is not going to have a negative impact. Mr. Gleason has said, I was under the understanding it was going to close at 7, and I have that in other notes from conversations. The service building here says it shall be operational from 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, and 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday. Prior notes of mine and conversations, and I've repeated back, I believe on the record, have always said 7 to 7. So this was a new standard to me here. No major, and I will say I got the.
Jackie, it says 5 o'clock. It says 5 o'clock on Saturdays, not 7.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say that. 6:30 to 8:30 Monday through Friday, 6:30 to 5 Saturday, and I was always under the impression, as was I think my client, that it was always 7 to 7. Something Mr. Gleason also mentioned in his letter is that because there have been no previous complaints over the last several years to the Planning and Zoning Commission on behalf of Middlesex Commons, it would be therefore the board could conclude that this was a good neighbor. BMW is a good neighbor, and I'd just like to say that I don't think that you can make that conclusion. Don't know that everyone is always aware of their rights or has followed along in that regard, and we are here and we've been vocal and trying to work together on that. And I forgot to mention that earlier, but it's an important distinction to make. Car wash as well, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday. These hours were inconsistent with our expectations. Then they speak about the acoustic wall, and then applicants shall maintain proposed landscaping on their properties. And certainly that is commendable. We'd like to see that codified in a landscape maintenance agreement, and with also a commitment and time schedule associated with planting on the Middlesex Commons property as well, should you approve this. And again, we think that the approvals can be compartmentalized, and you have the ability both to approve those requests that are consistent with your site plan and special permit regulations, and can deny those sections of the request that are not. We have put forth, I have offered here some of the comments about the landscaping plans. We believe that the construction should be in accordance with any approved plans enumerated, consistent with the findings of the ARB. We believe that there should be maximum hours on construction during the construction of any approved facilities. 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday. We will suggest some operational conditions as well. They have to do with when deliveries can be made, when lighting shall be turned off or the dimmers shall begin, how the approved lighting will be adjusted, that there should be a liaison with the Planning and Zoning Commission, a name and a number that both the applicant, that the commission can reach at the commission or staff can reach at BMW, as well as members of Middlesex Commons, and cleaning of the adjacent property from Middlesex Commons during any construction. And we remain strongly in objection to the rooftop parking. And if you do permit that, we have some conditions that we have discussed already with Mr. Gleason that would be acceptable, but certainly this use we do not believe is supported by the special permit criteria, and we reserve any rights associated with by law after any decision is made by the commission. But again, we appreciate all of your time and dedication to this. I know that many of them have comments to make as well, and happy to answer any additional questions you may have about documents that we've put into the record in support of our position.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. I just do have a few questions for you. You mentioned something about the ARB most recent letter talks about massing. Is that,
yes.
Are you talking about the
yes.
letter from March 22nd?
Yes.
Can you show me where it says massing in there?
I will. In the second to last paragraph on page 2, it reads, "It should also be noted that board members maintain the massing of the service building is too large for its location on the site, and considering its proximity to the residential property. This is one of the main reasons for our focus on the service building's design and screening."
Okay. Are you familiar with the new Walgreens that's being built in Darien?
Yes, I am.
You know, it's got rooftop parking,
I do.
and you know, it's directly across the street from a residential neighborhood.
It is across the street from a neighborhood. It is not on an adjacent property line.
See, they go across the street, and it has a ramp to go up to the top of it.
I do, but I think that the building conditions are distinguishable.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you know that we have it.
I do, and that is why I was saying that no one has lived next to it. I was being very careful in my words that while I know that you recently installed one and it's under construction, there really is no comparable. We don't know how it's all going to work out, but also it's a different composition and of land, and they don't share a property line. There's a separation distance that does not exist here that makes it distinguishable.
Were you at
I don't think that serves the precedent.
we made a text change to the SP zone to allow rooftop parking in January of 2020.
Yes.
The hearings were in probably November of 2020.
2019.
We were present at all those.
Right, so you know that we approved a text change to allow rooftop parking in the SP zone.
I do, and in fact, we came to that hearing. We were very vocal in our opposition to that, and in an effort to compromise, one thing that we did offer into that record was an alternative language with certain conditions that were rejected as being too stringent for that time, when we were advised that the appropriate time to object to rooftop parking and to address those type of those conditions was at the site plan and special permit hearing. And so while I was saying earlier in my testimony that while rooftop parking may be an appropriate use in the SB zone, it is not appropriate for its application on this property, even though I know it was brought to you by this applicant to serve its intent of building it on this property, and we all were well aware of that. But I was told the special permit conditions were what would be considered its application. And so we are here, and I don't take that I do know just adopting a text change that seems appropriate doesn't mean that it is appropriate, its application at each property. And I'm fairly certain that your commission all agreed with that when you rejected some of our suggested modifications at the time.
Yeah, I don't disagree. That's why we have the special permit process, but to my knowledge, that text change was never appealed, right?
It was not.
It wasn't appealed. Okay. Weiler, it's one of the questions that we talked about the parking and the dimmer of the lights and whatnot. If the rooftop parking is going to be for employees only, and for argument's sake, at 8 o'clock at night, there should be no cars on that roof because all the employees went home. Can we turn off those lights permanently when the place is not in operation?
I can't speak to that. I would need Matt Cosgrove. There may be some needs for, we are happy to do that if they're not in use and it's limited only to employees.
If there's no cars up there, do you need the lights in the parking lot on?
Matt, are you here? Can you address that?
Is Matt the?
Can you hear me?
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, for security reasons, there has to be some sort of lighting. It could be.
Can you just identify yourself, ma'am?
Yeah.
Or Weiler?
So that was Paula Callari
Thank
speaking.
Oh, sorry about that.
Has to be
She
some
needs to
sort
be
of
on
light.
camera and identified for the record.
Oh my God.
Is that another use of profanity on this record?
Karen, I don't think you have to have a camera on.
Actually, are you sure about that?
I didn't read the.
And can we just refrain from use of profanity, whether it be the applicants or commission members? I'm sorry, I find it offensive.
I don't know what I said, but
You said, oh my God.
I didn't realize I didn't have I needed to have my camera on. I apologize. For security, so Paula Callari with BMW of Darien, I would think we would need some sort of lighting on the roof, even if no one is there, for security reasons. It can be on a 50% or 25%, but something, there has to be some sort of lights there.
If there's no cars on the roof, I mean, I get it. If that's what you said, that's what you said.
Yeah, but if there's a sensor showing motion, so let's say if there were people coming onto our property illegally,
onto the roof,
a lighting sensor would come on, because security, when police then come to the property, they want the lighting.
Aren't there gates?
Do you know if you, Kara, I got it, Kara.
Okay. Sorry,
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Do you close that gate at night that we
Yes.
talked about at the beginning?
Everything is locked up, but that doesn't mean someone isn't going to. We had a theft of cars several years ago where people came in through the gates.
I know.
So anything can happen. It's just for reasons. I have no issue with turning the lights off.
Okay.
But the even request that we have lights inside the dealership so they can see in.
Okay.
I have no problem. That's not an issue for the police department, then I have no issue with it.
Okay. I'm just trying to see if we write a resolution to this, we say those particular lights on that rooftop get shut off at the close of business or whatever the time is. But if it's something that's workable, it's workable. If it's not, it's not.
I would want to make sure that our insurance is not going to create issues with that. It would be understood that the lights would be, they may be shut down, but if there's motion on the rooftop, the lights will come up full blast for security reasons. I assume it can't be that shut down permanently. It's got to be something that, and I just want to make sure that in imposing a condition like that, we don't run afoul of whatever insurance requirements are. They may not be as friendly towards it as you're suggesting. So,
Right, because the other lights are going to 50%, right?
correct.
And then if the motion gets tripped, then it goes to 100%. I guess the alternative to what I was saying was maybe those lights can go to 0%. If the motion gets tripped, they go to 100%.
Yeah, that's fine. We have no problem with that.
Put
That'd
that
be great.
in. If we have an issue with it, we'll come back and explain why. I think that works for us.
Okay, thank you. That sounds great.
Excuse me,
Jeremy, is there any, do we have any other examples of a landscaping maintenance agreement in Darien?
There are, the commission has handled this in a number of ways in the past relative to required landscaping. And oftentimes what we'll do is put a condition.
Oh, great. I unmuted. You're muted.
I'm on. Want me to turn off?
I
So in a case like this, I'll do it. In a case like this, the commission could put in its resolution a requirement to not only plant the landscaping, but an affirmative requirement to maintain the landscaping going forward, that if any landscaping dies or is not thriving, that it get replaced in a timely manner. That is not an uncommon type of condition that the commission has put in the past for situations where you're creating a buffer situation like this.
So the answer is it's baked into the resolution.
Yes,
It's not a separate document.
correct.
Okay, and that's standard practice.
Yes.
Okay. And the only time it doesn't, if we do like that house on Eddie Lane, they had that, that was something different, right? Where there was a deed, it's deed restricted and.
Yeah, that was deed restricted open space.
Right.
In that case, or conservation easement. Here, there's no easement, there's no open space, but it's it would be potentially a requirement in the resolution saying specifically, this is what needs to be there. And if anything dies off, it has to be replaced.
Is that in perpetuity or is that for just 3 years?
Going forward, yeah.
Okay. But it's always on our property, it's not on somebody else's.
Right, you could make them go on to someone else's property to replace it.
Replace a tree.
And that's what Wilder, and I think Jackie even mentioned as well, that once the plantings are put on the Middlesex Commons property, it will be up to the
Without that feedback.
Commons Association to maintain them.
I'll try to.
Okay.
You certainly can, as
other-
a commission, you can compel an applicant to. Ask the question.
How do they do that?
Steve, you're on mute.
All right, I'm sorry. Jackie or Attorney Coppin, the only thing I'm trying to figure out is the solar panels. ARB approved solar panels on a thing called Old Town Whole Homes, which is the Royal today, which are visible from the street. Their letter doesn't say anything about solar panels. So I'm trying to figure out if there's anything we can do with your issue relative to the solar panels, because 90% of the time, I mean, you drive down Highland Avenue, you can see solar panels on the roof. And that's a residential next to a residential. So and ARB doesn't mention it, so I'm just trying to think of what's the big, what's your thoughts on that? You don't like solar panels? You want to get flat? I was at a building yesterday for 2 hours.
Everyone should like solar panels. It's that we have had strong mitigation efforts to conceal any commercial activity from the view of Middlesex Commons. And those are going to project over that rooftop. So I provide that for your consideration because it's inconsistent with the other mitigation efforts that have been offered. Spoken with members of the applicant's team. I understand that those can be adjusted and at certain angles, but certain different angles to minimize the visual impact. But I was raising my hand really to respond to something that I feel that we glossed over. If I may have a moment to respond.
So just relative to this one issue about solar panels, ARB didn't say anything.
Yeah, this is about the rooftop parking because I'd like to just comment on something I didn't get to finish, but.
Okay. I think, I'm not sure if we have any more questions of me, of you, to what you talked about, but I think I'm okay. Okay, yeah, go ahead. What, you had something you forgot to mention?
No, I wanted to, in response to a dialogue between you and Mr. Gleason, and we were talking about a rooftop parking and the impact of the lighting that should, if you were to permit rooftop parking, we could modify the lighting. The lighting could be adjusted to respond to when the rooftop was not in use. And we talked about the employee parking potentially as or that was offered as a condition, but not really, or I don't even actually think it was offered as a condition, but needs to be a condition. It's precisely why this rooftop parking is distinguishable from Walgreens and is inconsistent with your special permit standard, because you're talking about elements of the business operation that cannot be reconciled with your zoning regulations. For instance, well, we can give you a condition about the lighting that it could be turned down at this particular time, so long as it is not in conflict with our insurance policies, or it may go up, a squirrel may run by. I don't know how sensitive it is. Maybe Mr. Schiff can speak to this, but if it's sensitive enough to just be knocked, to be knocked on all night by a squirrel or a bird or a small animal, and I've heard this discussed in other land use capacities, which is why I raise it. It's not a fear. It's just something I've heard in practice. That's an important thing. If that can't be controlled, that goes to your special permit standard. If the applicant is not willing to accept a condition that will control the way that the use of the rooftop parking is managed in perpetuity, if they want to come back and make an adjustment, come back and make an adjustment later if this isn't working for them. But it's going to be used for employee parking, except for when it's not, when it's inventory or when we want a delivery or this or that. We all have business needs. We all have personal needs. But the reason why you have section 1006 is to put conditions on any approval to make it consistent, or to be able to put the application squarely within the I guess the jurisdiction of section 1005 for special permit conditions. So I just want to raise those things because it's exactly the reason why, we object to it, because it just simply can't be managed in a manner that that can bring any certainty to Middlesex Commons. And again, you have something under construction now in the town, but there is no comparable experience to this one.
In my course of business, I see rooftop parking at car dealerships and places all the time. That's my own personal professional.
I don't deny that they exist, Mr. Chairman, but they don't exist right now in Darien and in comparable communities.
Okay.
They do not have them in the surrounding communities for us to make a reasonable comparison.
Okay, I'd have to check that.
And I also, every time I feel that people do bring up things to the Planning and Zoning Commission about experiences they have with uses outside of the community, is usually rejected, with all due respect, that, oh, this works in the town next door, but we were reminded we are not in the town next door and we have our own regulations, and you do allow it, certainly, and you allowed it at the offering of this particular applicant, and there is no other precedent. So I think having a very detailed conversation and a very considerate deliberation with very specific conditions is going to be very appropriate and necessary in this instance.
I understand your position. I hear it 100%.
Thank you. I have
Got
nothing
it.
further.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this application? Mr. Reagan?
Hello?
Mr. Reagan or
Let the
Mr.
young lady
McKegney?
speak first, please. She was on first.
Sure. Mr. McKegney, just state your name and.
Yeah, my name is Charles McKay. Good evening. I reside at 65 Hale Lane. That's Building 9, which is one of the buildings that looks right out on BMW. Units 67, 69, and 71 have second-story windows that are shown prominently in all the pictures from BMW. I mean, I simply have to address my comments to the fact that the regs require that the commission find that there is no adverse impact from this proposal to put rooftop parking really in the backyards of these homes. Now, I think if you look at the definition of adverse in Webster's, you're going to see that it comes in different ways, but it all boils down to harmful. Now, we know if you folks were living in your home and someone wanted to put a parking lot behind your house, you would consider that harmful. Well, we have the same view. So I really failed to see how you could possibly make an affirmative finding, a positive finding, that there is no adverse impact in these circumstances. Now, I think it's particularly interesting that the ARB, in its letter to you, really opined on this subject. Now, these are not paid experts by us. I'm in the business of litigating matters, and I know the limitations on expert opinions. The ARB is not the experts paid by Middlesex Commons. The ARB said service building too large for its location on the site, considering its proximity to the residential properties. And that goes to the heart of the parking. By you folks, if you permit parking, you're adding insult to injury. And I don't think you want to do that. I think you're there to fairly balance the interest of Darien residents. And if you do that, you certainly will not impose that kind of parking right in the bedrooms of these units on that property. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Would anybody else like to speak to this application? Mr. Reagan?
Good evening. Jack Regan, Hale Lane, and a member of the board, the treasurer of the Middlesex Commons Condominium Association.
Welcome, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I'm sorry I have to take this approach, but I have to ask a basic question of all of you. Are you prepared to state that the parking lot will not have a negative impact on us? If you can't do that, you shouldn't approve it. That is in your rules, in your findings, in your report. I believe it's number 11 in the report that you issued in January of 20. Now, that clear and simply is the basic problem you face in this case. BMW can have its service building and its new reception area basically as planned. ARB has done a fine job and listened to the condo residents. It has done its role, but they have come up with significant improvements, which Mr. Wilder is presenting as his improvements. They did not exist until we had, I believe it might be a record number of hearings at ARB. I think it's been 5. So they have come up as a result of our giving input and ARP's good people coming up with their ideas. No matter how much BMW and its attorney try to hide it, a parking lot on the roof adjacent to our homes will have a negative input. That doesn't take experts. That's common sense. You don't want it in your backyard. We don't want it in our backyard, and you can stop it from happening. Now, we will acknowledge that BMW has a parking problem. You know that I think it's about 1/3 of their present parking spots are leased parking spots from the town and from Whole Food. The property is already overstressed in terms of what it should be doing. Now, we've offered to work with them. We offered to work with them in writing and verbally, and they have just ignored our request to do that. And that was during their development. That's why this is going on for so long. This is the third, well, our third fiscal year, and I think it's my 5th meeting with this board, my 5th president at this board. Now, you already have in writing several other possibilities for parking. Several other possibilities. They exist. There's no question they exist. But I think the only way BMW will even consider them is if they are forced to do so. Now, we're not professionals, but I know that if the ARB and the planning board would cooperate with BMW, their parking problem could be solved. Their situation with expanding their number of, they want to expand by 1 bay over the number they now have. With slight adjustments that they could do. If you could do away with the ramp, and that ramp takes up 12 feet behind the building, you could move the building back 12 feet and create 12 feet in the front of the building and put parking. There are a half a dozen other solutions to this problem, but they have to be forced to look at them. There is no necessity to having a novel approach, a novel to Darien, novel to Fairfield County for the sake of BMW. BMW is a valuable part of this this community, and we want it to stay there. And there are many ways that they can stay there and have what they need. They already have the service building, really. They already have the new reception area, that's fine. But to go to rooftop parking, that's wrong. I've already addressed the fact of how this has implications for other zoning issues. Well, we are unique in that we share a mutual border, a residential and a commercial property sharing a border. But what's to say that on the other side of 95, the Land Rover building, they'd love to expand and increase the value of their property by having rooftop parking. Just a little further down the street, on the other side of the road, why wouldn't Chevy do it?
Yeah.
Turn around and say, hey, how did BMW get the increase from the 25 to the 30 feet, from the 20% use footage to the 25%? They compared everything to downtown. Well, if I own property downtown, I will immediately turn around and say, I'll be better off if I can put my parking on the roof and use the space on the ground for other purposes. It just makes sense. We feel the commission should carefully consider this most basic question here, the negative impact on the residents. You have made the rules, you've approved the rules, we're asking you to go by the rules. You clearly state in your findings, in your report last year, that no resident should be negatively impacted by a parking structure. Look to the rules again. You made them. We ask you to uphold them. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you for the comments. Anybody else like to speak to this application? I think that's it. Before I want to look for a motion to close. Want to make any comments? Say hi to your wife for me. It's up to you, Weiler.
Yes, Steve, I would like to ask Craig Flaherty, Katie Haas, and Mike Kozlowski to address in order, and it doesn't have to be in this order, but Craig, Mr. Reagan said that there's easy alternatives to what we propose. You have analyzed those alternatives and indicate that they have no basis, a realistic prospect of being approved. Katie, I would like you to address the lighting question that Jackie Kaufman raised concerning the light at the northeast corner of the building. And Mike, I'd like you to talk about the solar panels. If you feel this is important, guys, but we could pass it because I don't think those are really driving this, but I can tell you that what they're complaining about, we've got STIPs about the solars that we're not going to do the solars higher than 15 inches. We're 135 feet from the nearest condominium. That's really not an impact. The light that Jackie was talking about is on the northeast corner of the building. It's 8 feet off the ground. It lights 4 inventory parking spaces, and it is 32 feet from the condo property line. It cannot be seen from the condos because of the screening on the condo property, existing and proposed, the 8-foot fence, and its location below the height of the fence on the condo property. And then, so we dealt with the solar panels, the light, and I wanted to mention that in 1985, when the condos were approved, this was the first condominium built in Darien. And condos were a new use that was viewed as noxious to adjacent residential uses. And Old Stone Road was a residential use on a portion of the condo property. And the library was next door. And so the condos were required to maintain a 25-foot buffer to protect adjacent properties, including the Howard Johnsons and what was our service lot, which was then owned by Callahan Construction and was a construction lot. So the condo original approval had a 25-foot buffer around the perimeter of it. And now 35 years later, they have now and they're not in a residential zone. It's not a residential zone. It's a residential use in a commercial zone. And they are surrounded by the Board of Ed, the former library building, the Darien Sports Shop, Whole Foods, the Town Refuse Center, the DPW Maintenance Yard, and our property, which is less than 10% of the perimeter of the condo. The condo perimeter is 2,800 feet. We're 280 feet. So they have very little adjacent residential property, and they're in a commercial zone, and we're a commercial use. They all knew that, or should have found that out when they bought. And this is a new use. It's appropriate. You've allowed it. We are seeking your approval. We believe we meet the standards, and we don't have to prove that this is the only plan. We have to prove that we meet your standards, and we believe we do. So I just summed up.
That's okay. I mean, we're looking to finalize. I think Kara Gately's got a question though. I don't know who it's for. We'll find out.
It's actually for Attorney Gleason. So I just want to understand correctly. So if a residential condominium, as you said, noxious development is located in what would now sort of be considered in what is local, like recently being talked about as a mixed use development, right? This is a, residential use in a commercial zone. So I think while it may not be technically zoned as mixed use, it can be considered, right, by the very nature of the fact that it's a mixed use in the zone, correct? That those neighbors no longer are afforded the right as residents who live there 24/7, right? It's not like a store. It's not like a business. These are people's homes. So they aren't afforded like the consideration of whether changes in development and changes of neighboring properties may have an adverse impact on their homes.
They absolutely
because they happen to be in a mixed use development or a mixed use zone.
That's not what I was saying.
Okay, so what were you saying? Maybe you should clarify.
In 1985, condominiums were not a preferred use. They were regarded as suspect because it was brand new.
Are they still considered that way?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And
Wilder, we don't have to go, in my opinion, Wilder, we don't have to go into a history lesson.
Yeah, okay. That's
I mean,
not
I'm just asking simply if residents in the town who happen to live in a higher density development are still afforded the consideration that changes and increased intensity development to neighboring properties, that they're still afforded the consideration of whether such changes and intensity will have an adverse impact on their homes.
Absolutely, and your regulations require that, that you
Thank
consider
you.
it as part of your deliberations.
Motion to close.
Yep. Okay, you're all done, right, Wilder?
I'm done.
With that said, I would entertain a motion to close this hearing. Jennifer makes, can I have a second? Jim Rance, a second. Fantastic. All in favor? 6-0. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's time.
I did not raise my hand, so it's
Okay.
5-1.
It's 5-1. Kara did not.
5-1.
5-1.
I didn't get all the documents in time. I can't, I need to review every.
Got it.
I mean, it's a factual issue.
You got it. 5-1. Okay. Hearing's closed. We are going to move on to the next item on the agenda. I just need 2 minutes to get my papers out of the way.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. All right, next. Oh, do we have to amend the agenda?
We'll do that as we get.
Okay, thank you. All right, sorry. Next on the agenda, subdivision application number 629, Peter and Catherine Thomas, 130 Leroy Avenue. Proposal to divide the subject 1.2 acre plus or minus acre property into two separate building lots respectively, 0.613 and 0.589 plus or minus acres in size. The existing residence and associated improvements on the lot are to be raised. Though conceptual improvements are shown, development of the newly created building lots is not proposed at this time. The property is located on the southeast corner formed by its intersection of Leroy Avenue and Rock Spring Lane. It is shown on Assessor's map number 17 as lot number 53 in the R1 half zone. So this looks like a big piece of land with a house on it in a half-acre zone. Jeremy, what do we got?
That's correct. This is a oversized property for the zone it's in, so there is sufficient room to divide it into two. Of course, the proposed dividing line shows it going through the existing residence, so the existing residence would have to be demolished before they file the map in the land record. There's no wetlands on the property. Property's not in the flood zone. It's fairly gently sloping property on Leroy Avenue. I believe engineer Doug DeVesta is here to present the plans.
Good evening, Doug DeVesta, professional engineer, represent the applicant. On the screen right here, you've got the existing site. It's a 1.2 acre parcel or 52,334 square feet. It's in the half acre zone, as Jeremy mentioned. It's bordered by Leroy Avenue to the west, Spring Rock Lane to the north, and Partridge Lane to the east. And residential zone, and residential property on the east and on the south side. The property is served by municipal water and sanitary sewer. Both are in Leroy Avenue. The existing structure, house on the property, was built in 1895 with a detached garage constructed around 1950. As Jeremy mentioned, we're proposing to take the 1.2 acre parcel and subdivide that into two half-acre parcels, which is shown in my rendering here. The northern lot, A1, will have approximately 26,693 square feet, greater than the 21,780 square feet required for the half acre. And the southern lot will have about 25,641, again, larger than the required half acre zone. The other minimum requirements for the lot width is 100 feet. We've got 102 plus or minus feet for the width of it, so we meet that requirement. The frontage and minimum requirement is 50, and we've got 102 along Leroy Avenue. The southern lot here has two front yards. You've got a 40-foot yard setback from Leroy, and then also a portion of it off of Partridge Lane, so another 40-foot on the side. We're looking to, again, cut this into two single-family houses. What's shown here is really just a feasibility plan to demonstrate that we can put on two single-family homes on there with driveway access from Leroy Avenue with a patio and potential pool areas. And what we did designs of drainage systems for this proposed site plan. Obviously, on these lots, if the commission does approve this, the lots do get subdivided. Again, the potential owners will have a different footprint or something like that. Then we would obviously revise the drainage systems on here. Darren had comments on this, and one of the comments was to do soil testing, and we did that as of yesterday. So these plans that you're seeing here on my screen are been revised, and they were uploaded onto the website this afternoon by the P&Z staff. So we did test holes on each of the lots and with percolation tests as well to demonstrate that we do have the capacity for the drainage system to handle the runoff from this feasibility plan we do to a reduction flow from the 2 through the 50-year design storm as required. We've also provided stormwater quality below the invert of the control outlets of the drainage system. So we are meeting that requirement as well. And each of the new houses will be connected to the sanitary sewer and to the municipal water system that are in Leroy Avenue. We do show AC units and generators both are being within the building setback lines. That's really, and then stormwater, and then just erosion control, silt fence around the perimeter of the properties for both lots, stockpile areas on both lots, any tracking pads onto Leroy Avenue. On the plan, we do talk about, again, these are just feasibility, that any road opening permits, any, opening into the road for driveways and all that will require a permit from DPW, connecting to the sanitary sewer on the, one of the proposed lots will require permission from the DPW as well. There's already an existing lateral from the existing house connected to that. So the other one lot, the southern lot, will just use the existing connection to the sanitary sewer. And as mentioned, Jeremy mentioned that the existing residence will be raised as long as, and as well as the detached garage, and the driveway that's there now would also be removed. That's really it. If there's any questions from the commission, I'll be glad to answer them.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Doug. So in Darren Ostefine's letter, you did number 7 and number 8 like yesterday, and that's the new plan. So
That's correct. That's correct. And we modified the drainage system according to what we found in our test holes. So that's everything's up to date, as well as the detail sheet.
Okay. Okay, I got it. Now that's a pretty yellow house, right? All right. Does any commissioners have questions for the applicant or for Doug DeVesta? It's a pretty straightforward subdivision, right? We're not missing anything, are we?
No.
Okay, would anybody for the, Fred? Go ahead, bud.
Doug, can you just speak to the large trees that front on Leroy Avenue and whether those will remain or be cut down?
There are several large trees, not shown on the survey, but there are several large trees on the Leroy Avenue side. They are very large. Some pine trees are on the southern part of the property here. As of right now, they probably will be cut down just for the fact they are very large, and if they do fall, they have potential of causing damage on the road, power lines down, things like that. So yes, right now, I would assume they would be cut down, but again, that's up to potential buyers. If they want to keep them and modify the driveway locations, they can be done that way as well.
Anybody, Fred's an official, or yeah, he's an official, right? He's not a member of the public. Would anybody to the public like to speak to this application? Sir, with the woman waving. Yes, just unmute yourself, sir. Hold on, Liz. Unmute yourself, sir. Go ahead.
Sure.
Speak.
It's Byron Callan. I'm a resident of 4 Rock Spring Lane. I'm just curious, what happens to the trees on Rock Spring Lane in this application?
Well, again, as I mentioned, what Fred question Fred asked as well, they're along the property line here. Again, if the owners of the potential buyers of these lots choose to take them down, they can be taken down. If they prefer to keep them up, they can keep them up. So again, it's all going to depend on the potential buyers of the property and the development of the property.
We have no regulations against that, right? I mean, I cut down trees on my house.
It's unclear whose property those trees are on, at least to me.
Because they're not on this survey, right?
Well, this is Doug's site plan. I don't know. Doug, were they on the survey, those trees? The survey done by the surveyor?
Let's take a look here. I don't believe they are. No, they're not showing, Jeremy.
Jeremy just ditched. He just left the room for a second to go get something. Okay, well, we're looking at that. Sir, we're trying to get an answer to your question. But it was a question, who owns the trees?
There's Rock's Lane.
Right.
Right. And you can see there's a little area between that. It would be unclear whether they're on the property or not.
Right, because here's the dashed line here shown on my plan is the edge of Rock Spring and here's our property line. So there is an area that is a grass area between the property and Springfield. So the trees may very well be right on the property line or right on this right of way here.
Don't know.
Who's right away is that?
It would be the owners of this. You see, Mr. Callan lives there?
Oh, okay. That's the gentleman speaking.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's unclear where the trees are.
Okay, so that driveway just. Go ahead, sir. You're good? Dear answer your questions, we don't know what's gonna happen to those trees. But if they're on the right of way and that's your right of way, I think you have something to say about it.
Yeah, no, the trees just looked awfully close to the property line. So
Yes,
again,
I believe the trees are on the property.
just something to get clarified. Thank you.
Okay. Would someone else like to speak to this application? There was another gentleman that bumped in. All right, Ms. Geiger, would you like to speak to this application? Just unmute yourself. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Your meetings go a lot later than ours. My name is Elizabeth Geiger. I'm chairman of the Architectural Review Board. I think I'm familiar with a lot of you guys. I would like to request from Planning and Zoning that you guys keep this application open until myself and the town historian is able to go to this house, this historic house, and review it for architectural details and make sure that it is at all demolition worthy. I'm not familiar with the owner of this house, and I don't know the specific historical details of it offhand. I apologize for not being more prepared. The application caught me late on today, but I do know that this house is a landmark house for Darien. It is well recognized by all members of the community, and many people have come and asked me about it over the years as to its historical significance. So for the owner to demolish this structure would be a great loss for Darien. So I would like to do a formal review of this before it is approved by Planning and Zoning Commission for demolition.
Okay. Jeremy, is this on any protected, it doesn't have a plaque on it, right?
I did not see a plaque when I was out there today.
Is
It
it
could be.
Is it called out in the town planning conservation development?
Again, I didn't look today. I don't recall, but I'd have to check.
So Chairman and Mr. Ginsburg, a lot of our historic buildings are not called out in the town, in our town guidelines. I mean, we have hundreds of historic buildings in this town, and for us to list all of them on our, it is that we do have a national register. We do have a NAP survey, which lists a number of important houses, but to put them all within our guidelines is, you wouldn't even be able to publish a thing. It would be so large. We are in a crisis right now in Darien, where we are losing the integrity and character which builds our towns and gives it its unique feel. Without boring the board, I just think that the commission needs to give consideration before quickly demolishing structures like this that are, even if they're not plaqued houses, this one could be. It's a house that has a long history and is built much better than the houses they build nowadays. And I see what they're building. It's beautiful, it looks great, but there are options here. You can take this gorgeous house and redo the inside. You can take the house and shift it over on the lot so you can still subdivide. I just think consideration for this house should be given before dismissing it like many others do in this day.
Now, understood. We've delayed decisions and hearings and kept hearings open before. We did it over at 1950. We did it at the corner of Middlesex Road and Hollow Tree Ridge Road when they knocked down one house and built up three houses because somebody asked. Usually the town historian, which is Mary Gastel, looks for these things. Jim, did you want to add a comment real quick?
Oh, yeah, just it would be helpful before we agree to wait until the study, whatever, has to be done. How long is that going to take?
What we did on the last one, from I remember, is Marion Gastel walked through it. I don't know, 2 days later or something like that, and gave an answer. And it wasn't really a formal report, but I think we would, if we kept the hearing open, we could close it when?
Jim, the next available night to really get to something like this would be April 20th. So that's basically a month. So that should give plenty of time for this to be reviewed properly.
Okay, thanks.
Does anybody, any other commissioner, well, let's go to other person. Man, please, go ahead.
Ms. Thomas, the owner.
Ms. Thomas. Oh, you're the owner? Okay.
Yes, hi, I'm Kathy Thomas, and
Nice
I
to
am
meet
the
you.
owner of 130 Leroy. Hello, everybody. So just to address the initial questions, the house is not plaqued, either locally or from the state. And it is not on the list of important houses in Darien. And the research that I did on the house when we initially purchased it 20 years ago showed absolutely no historical significance for the house or the structure or the property or anything, just for the record.
Thank you.
So Steve,
No.
I was muted. I was
Go ahead,
muted.
Jen.
But I think Ms. Thomas just answered that. So it was not plaqued at the time of purchase?
It is not plaqued. It was not plaqued. It has never been plaqued.
Yeah,
No.
I think that's significant. Okay.
Okay. George Riley?
Well, my only comment is that I'm treading where I don't know a lot, but there is a whole independent process to demolish a residence in town like there is to take down a tree. There's a notice provision. You see them in the newspapers occasionally. So we are doing nothing about that, except we may be permitting the division, a new line through the middle of this plot of land. And then it's a tax assessor's issue. And then they can do what they want with the house, but if they want to tear it down, there would be a process by which they'd have to, get approval to do that. I'm not necessarily opposed to the delay, but I don't see the need because of the demolition possibility.
Wait, but George, can you just answer? I think that's a really good point. But given given where the house is, can they subdivide without demolition?
Yeah.
No, I'm sure they can. Looks like it's dead in the middle of the property.
So like,
but that doesn't affect us. I mean, we're
no, but how can we approve a subdivision? Right, demolition is right. Subdivision can't happen without demolition.
yes, it can. Yeah, we are subdividing, and if they want to tear it down, they can.
No, you can't.
You can't have you can't have a home straddling.
Oh, it'd be a pre-existing condition. Again, I'm going probably deeper than I should, but they'll have to work with the tax assessor as to whether or not
like a non-conforming.
It's going to be handled as 2 lots or something like that. But anyway, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Wouldn't that be a non-conforming?
No, hold on. You can't file the Mylar if there's a house straddling the line.
Right.
So Jeremy, so you can't, if you close the hearing, and for some reason they get rejected on the demo permit, you already closed the hearing, you'd have to reapply again because you can't subdivide the lot with the house straddling the line. So Jeremy.
Right. So ultimately it's up to the commission whether you want to leave the hearing open to April 20th, which would allow some investigation. And when you walk back in the room virtually on April 20th, you should have an answer even before then, we'll know the answer in terms of the house, any historical value of the house, whether the demolition, as George said, there's still a demolition process.
Right.
Where if that would go ahead, or if the town historian would say, wait, I'm going to put a delay on, you will know in a few weeks. So certainly if the commission wants to keep it open for those remaining weeks, let this all shake out a little bit, that would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry. So the town historian, even if it's not a plaqued house and someone's owned a non-plaqued house, can delay this so that but isn't like what George said, get a subdivision approval and then the next day get to tear down the house, right? There's notices and time in between. We wouldn't allow,
Property
or-
without demolition.
yeah, there's a significant amount of time, right? So I don't understand. Can't that time period be used for this investigation, or is that not possible?
What we've done in the past, Jen, is we've kept hearings open to allow
For
the
plaque
town
houses
attorney,
and non-plaqued houses.
both.
So for
Both.
non-plaqued house, like a homeowner has a non-plaqued house. Okay.
I think we did it on Hollow Tree and Hollow Tree and Middlesex. It was a non-plaqued house. The house next door was plaqued. We knew about it. It was near historic zone. And then when we did 1950, Marion Gestel was in and out of there in 10 minutes. She said, it's a plaqued house. It's got no historic significance. Knock it down. And I was shocked.
But
And you
how is
also
it
did on
plaqued?
Oak Farm
I
too,
don't
Steve.
really understand the protocol. I have to tell you, that's a little bit confusing to me that someone can stop a homeowner.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What would historic significance be? What's the criteria for historic significance?
Historian.
It's-
I'm a
it's-
historian, right?
That's, ma'am, I apologize, but I'm not really qualified to answer that question. That ends up being the town historian, or it gets pumped down to ARB.
No, it would be the town historian.
It's, that's it? Okay, so it's the town historian. You know,
So if there's been nothing recorded in at least the 100 some odd years that the house has been in existence with our Darien Museum, which was the Darien Historical Society, there's nothing on record. It is not plaqued.
Yep.
My question is, what makes a house have historical significance if there's been nothing documented by the town?
That you've seen.
I understand 100%. What I think what's being suggested is that you allow the town or the town historian a little bit of time just to confirm exactly what you said.
And I understand that. I understand, and I have no issue with Marianne coming in my home. I'm just wondering what she's.
Why don't you ask her?
Right? Like, so what is the criteria that she would be using to deem whether or not this house or any house is historic? Like, there should be a list of criteria, right? To say, okay, this is what makes this house historic, or this is what makes it not historic.
Right.
So
She may have that list, and I can tell you that we've had houses that were plaqued and that were historic, and she said the plaque shouldn't be on there. Knock them down.
Okay.
I don't know. In the town for the conservation development in 1996, there was, or 2006, there was a list. There was an actual list of protect these houses. We went back and did it in 2016. 4 of those houses were knocked down. I said, well, what happened to the list? And they said, well, we looked at them again, and they weren't anything. Larry Warble. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just a bit confused here on something. So just I guess what I'm wondering, I mean, if someone goes and says that this is a historic house, does that mean the owner can't do things? I mean, I'll tell you something, I got a little worried here. I just heard about 100 houses potentially in town that might be historic, that those owners have no idea that they might have some secret restrictions to what they can do with their property. So this is a little unnerving to think that we might just say, oh, you can't do what we would let anybody else do.
I want to defer to Jeremy. He's chomping at the bit.
Larry, the best I can explain it, and Liz Geiger can add to once I'm done. The demolition delay ordinance is for any structure more than 50 years old, I think it's. So when you look at 50 years old, you're looking at anything built prior to about 1961. So none of us in this room, none of us watching virtually would agree that a house built in 1952 is likely to be, Marion Kistel's not going to chain herself to such a house. It's just not going to happen.
Well, wait a minute. So I live in a house that was built in 1952.
Right.
If Marianne Castell says that I have a historic house,
right.
That's all that happens?
No. The way it works is, no. the demolition ordinance, there's a process in the building department where you have to post it, and we've all driven through town and seen signs on the buildings, demolition. There's also required to advertise. There's a requirement to abate any asbestos or any other type of things that are in the house, for example, depending on when the house was built. There is sign-offs by our department, the fire marshal, I believe, the building official, and the town historian, who all look at the demolition, how it's going to be done, where it's going to be done, and have to approve it prior to the building official authorizing the demolition to occur. The town historian can, under certain circumstances, authorize a delay. It is very rare, and I've seen in the past 20 years, it doesn't happen too often that Marion Castell says, I need a delay. Usually what happens is Marion or a representative will drive by the house or go into the house and say, yeah, there's nothing worth saving. I'm signing off on it. Or she'll work with the property owner and say, wow, that's a beautiful hearth. It's a beautiful fireplace hearth, or a beautiful door, or whatever it is. Let me see if I can find someone to preserve it or put it in the Museum of Darien or whatever. It is very rare. And Liz, maybe you can help me with this. I do not recall in my 25 years here of more than a handful, maybe 5 times where Marion has said, wait, I need another month to analyze this. Mostly she just checks the box and says, okay, get rid of the house. Liz, is that your recollection as well? A demolition delay being invoked by the town historian is, in my belief, rare, very rare.
It is really rare. The only time that comes up is when there's a house that's worth saving and the owner is dead set on wrecking it. And you guys talked earlier about like what makes a house historically significant. I mean, there are a number of factors that we look at to determine that. I mean, it goes down from the origin of when the original structure was put together. It has to do possibly with if it was a notable architect doing it. It could be basically just dated back to simple timelines. It could be as part of a larger narrative in a certain streetscape. A lot of factors determine this. So, and when you go back to a plaque house, I think Larry or one of the commission members asked, like, my house is old. Plaquing a house doesn't change from owner from doing anything. I live in a plaque house. I can do whatever I want to my house. There are no, as long as it follows the planning and zoning commission rules. That's why it's important, I think, for owners of houses and for our town to understand that it comes down to owner stewardship, for people in our town to love and respect these old homes. And a lot of times they aren't worth saving. Marion and I will go into homes and look at these and say, all right, this home has been rotted. The original structure has been rotted out. The frame is no longer good and it's not worth saving. That's one thing. But sometimes these homes are not, that's not the case. And just to demolish them, our whole goal here is trying to teach people that we shouldn't just replace them for new. New is not always better. But to your point, historic plaque home means nothing. I can go down there, anyone can go down to the Museum of Darien and say, hey, I think my home's significant because the guy that lived there before me was a famous musician. Let's plaque the house. You can go through the paperwork and pay a certain fee and it's done. So plaquing just gives you a little bit of bragging rights. It actually doesn't mean anything. If that clarifies for the commission.
Can I inquire, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Yes, please,
I'll just say, I don't see a reason to hold it open, and I know we have a lot on our plates, but, like, I'm fine either way.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just
George.
inquire,
Yes, sir.
Jeremy, does our commission have a role in approving a demolition permit?
No.
Then I think we should let that process go on its way, and we can approve this subject to being able to file later.
Okay.
I just how we approve a subdivision with the house there.
Well, let me ask the applicant.
This house all the time. The
I'm sorry,
house, the subdivision, you approve the subdivision, then they have to apply for the permit to demo the house.
Great. Mrs. Thomas? Or
Yes.
Doug Vestas for the applicant, would you be opposed if we kept this open for have Marion Gestel walk through the house?
I think that Marion has to walk through the house if the house is going to be demolished. So I think that to have the subdivision approved or to keep this open now is a bit unfair. I think that the subdivision, based on what we are proposing and what my property offers in terms of setbacks and drainage and all the criteria that you require for a subdivision, I believe my property meets those requirements. So I believe that the separate issue of the demolition of the house, I think that's a separate issue, a potential issue, right? And I would not be in concert with you pushing this back another month. I would not.
Okay. That's fine. That's why I asked you the question. But just for your edification, statutorily, we don't think the resolution or the final decision doesn't have to get made for 65 days. So you have 2 more meetings that we're going to go through on this, even though we closed the hearing tonight. But that's fine. That's fine. Okay. Carrie, you have a question?
No, I guess my questions were just sort of like, did you proactively, I know you did research, so you obviously did sort of your own, I don't, the expression like, sort of like, lounge chair, detective, people who like to look into crime stuff, but you did your own kind of like historical research on the home. So you were cognizant of the fact that it was an older home, yes?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I know how old the house is.
Right. Did you reach out to Barry Castell?
No.
Were you aware that we had a town historian?
Yes.
Is there a reason why you reach out to her proactively?
Oh, I feel like this questioning is a little unfair, Kara.
I'm kind of like, am I on?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm literally just wondering what the question you asked what the criteria was, and so if you wanted to know the criteria, couldn't Marion have told you that?
Well, to just answer. Well, let me just answer that. And you're making some assumptions. So let me just educate you on my journey with your home. So when we first purchased it over 20 years ago, I went to the Historical Society, which is now the Darien Museum.
Okay.
And there was nothing on record on the house.
Okay, so you did go to the Historical Society. That was my question.
20 years ago.
20 years ago.
So you asked me if I ever met with Marion Castell, and I have not.
No, but
Okay.
that was sort of my issue. I was wondering.
So if you'll just let me finish. So I went to the Historical Society and there was nothing on record about the house at all. I have subsequently inquired to see if I am on a list of important houses, and my house is not. So that was my research. That was my due diligence. And I think it was probably more than most people would have done in applying for a subdivision with a property that has the potential to meet every possible criteria for a subdivision.
I was just wondering, because you had asked what the criteria was. So
yes,
I was
because now you're talking about it being some sort of a historic house or having historical significance, which I had researched and it did not.
No.
So now you're saying it might, and I'm saying, well, what is that criteria? Because
no, I think that's a reasonable question, actually.
Okay.
No, I think that is a reasonable question, and I would like to know that criteria as well.
Can I just say that I feel like I am being attacked here for a very cut and dried subdivision, and I'm a little surprised by the aggressive tone that's being directed in my face right now. Honestly, I am a little bit surprised by this. I am a citizen of this town for 28 years, and I am trying to go through a pretty benign process, and I feel a little bit attacked. So please, if you could just take your tone down a little bit, I would really appreciate it.
I apologize. If anything about my
Thank you.
tone offended
Thank
you,
you.
and I actually ended by saying I agree that I think the criteria you brought up was a reasonable question, and was interested in knowing that information myself, which is why I asked if you had met with Ms. Castell, because I am interested in that criteria myself. And I was agreeing.
Could I
Thank
just
you.
interject now?
That's
Mr.
good, George.
Just real quickly, and this is a scenario I would not suggest Ms. Thompson reply to. The applicant should not feel any need to reply to this, but it would not be an unusual scenario for a property owner to get a subdivision approved to sell the property. And they may not yet be able to file the Mylar, but they may not want to go to the trouble and expense of tearing down the building before they sell it. And it's perfectly marketable. I defer to you realtors around here. So I think that hanging this up, waiting for a process to go forward, in which we do not participate, doesn't make sense.
No, I agree with you. I think we need to move forward. I don't see why we should be holding this up. And I certainly think, since everyone is lovely citizens of this town, that we can have a phone conversation, and that if the town historian wants to stop by and see it, and maybe there's something, I don't know, photos or something that can be kept on record, that sounds lovely. But there's no reason I see that Mr. and Mrs. Thomas should be held up by this inquiry, especially since, if Mary had wanted to call since the time that we've had this on record, that would have also been good, since it's her prerogative, right, to like see this, to make sure she wants to view it. I mean, really, she has no jurisdiction over what the Thomases can do. So I don't see any reason to hold this up. And I represent subdivisions all the time before houses are torn down. So that is, that's not even something that the sequence of events doesn't make sense in that case as well.
That's fine. Okay. Would anybody else in the general public like to speak to this application? Gentleman with your hand up.
Sure, Byron Callan again. There is an open question about the trees on Rock Spring Lane. That's not Spring Rock Lane. So I just want to be very clear that if those trees can't be torn down, I don't know how that affects the plan that's been shown by the Thomases.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
Byron.
no, I can answer. We can go over that.
If the trees are on the Rock Spring property, they won't be touched. Can't imagine, even for the subdivision that's being proposed, it has nothing to do with the trees. Nothing about the trees is on all of the property that you see on the map on your screen belongs to Pete and me. There's that whole little strip along Rock Spring that belongs to Rock Spring. So if there is a tree there, according to the subdivision, none of those trees would be disturbed anyway. There's nothing there that needs to be disturbed in order to build these houses. So I don't think those trees along Rock Spring are even, if it's on Rock Spring's property or on our property, I don't think any of them will need to be disturbed.
That was fine. It was just the earlier conversation about it wasn't clear whose responsibility those trees are. I think historically they've been Rock Spring. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't entering a situation where those are going to be all torn down.
No, those have nothing to do with the subdivision. They are, minimally, they are along the border, but none of them would have to be disturbed in order to build these houses. Should this go forward?
Right.
Okay, we're good. We'll address that issue. Would anybody else in the public like to speak to this application? With that being said, I will entertain a motion to close this. Do we have votes to close this hearing? Jim Rand's motion. George, Larry Warble seconded. All those in favor of closing this application? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed to closing the application? Anybody opposed to closing it, leaving it open? Karen, did you vote?
I just don't have enough information. I'd really like to abstain unless I could understand what the historical.
Leave it open.
Okay.
So it's 4-1 to 1.
4 to 1 to 1. Got it.
Yeah, okay. The hearing's closed. The vote was 4 to close it, 1 to leave it open, 1 abstention. So ma'am, we will deliberate on this subdivision on April 6th.
With the decision maybe at a later meeting.
And you'll get a decision at a later meeting. Okay? I appreciate your time and sorry for any inconvenience to yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Commissioner.
No problem. Thanks, Doug, for presenting.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda. We're just going to go forward. Oh, here we go. Amendment to special permit application. Right? Did I skip something? Did I skip
No,
something?
this is third one. 141 Holmes Avenue.
Oh, it's wrong. Okay. Flood zone information application number 405, landfilling and regrading application number 497, Ryan and Diana Claxo? 141 Holmes Avenue, proposal to raise the existing garage slab and elevations around the house to remove it from a flood zone and to perform related site development activities within a regulated area. The 0.34 plus or minus acre subject property is on the east side of Holmes Avenue at its intersection with Rose Lane and Park Lane, and it's shown on Assessor's map as map 25 as lot number 52 in the R1 zone. Jeremy, what do we got?
Here, this is a very simple application, but it's a little unusual in that part of the house is currently in the flood zone, and it's a fairly flat property. So what the applicant will do is put a little bit of fill around the house who will fill their way into the flood zone, prepare a letter of map revision, and that will then allow them to have this house out of the flood zone. What they do is the driveway lift the driveway by about 6 inches, lift the garage a little bit. It's an attached garage. And what they're going to do, and engineer Harry Roachville is here to explain, is they're going to do compensatory storage. So they're going to fill a little in the flood zone and then create a little swale in the property to allow floodwaters to fill that area in a big flood. So it's a little unusual, but it really does allow the property owner to put in less than a foot of fill in certain parts of the property, just in the front and along the side, which would then, they would then be able to ascertain with FEMA that they no longer need flood insurance. I'll let Harry take it from here.
And just before you introduce yourself, Harry, for the other commissioners, I guess, historical knowledge, after Superstorm Sandy hit, we saw applications like this in the Bay, like every week, where they just lifted houses 4 feet.
Right, well, here they're just lifting the garage. It's kind of interesting.
It says they're lifting the house in the garage, no?
No, the house is not getting lifted, just the garage, because it only needs to be lifted, I think, 5 inches, Harry, something like that. It's going from 38.9 to 39.4. So it's literally getting this much. The garage is getting lifted, so that's why they have to lift the driveway up, because they're lifting. No, it's not the detached garage. So it's a little unusual. Harry?
Speak away, Harry Rothschild.
Thank you, Jeremy. Harry Rothschild with McCord Engineering, representing the Plaxons. I think Jeremy did a pretty good job of describing it, but I'll touch on it a little bit further. He's exactly right. The flood and elevation for this property, it's in zone AE. The elevation is 39.3. And I will share my map too, so you guys can. Sorry, there it is. Okay.
If
So
you're
you see this,
sharing yours, Harry, it's not on our screen right now.
it's not.
No.
Sharing window.
There he is. Now we got it.
You got it now?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So again, 141 Holmes Ave. The property is about 0.33 acres. Topography drains to the south this way towards Holmes Ave. you'll see here, this is the area that we're trying to remove from the floodplain. If I zoom in on, you'll see the spot elevations over here, 39.9, a 40 contour. The property is in the flood zone with an elevation of 39.3. So the goal is to increase the elevations around the property in the area that's currently in the flood zone to that, to just above that flood zone elevation of 39.4, thus removing it from the flood zone and not requiring them to pay flood insurance, which would require a LOMA application further down the line if this were to be approved. Along with increasing the grades around the house, we would also be increasing the garage slab, as Jeremy mentioned, to an elevation of 39.4 as well, to be just above the flood zone. And again, as Jeremy touched on, that's about 6 inches above where it's currently at. As the flood regulations state, since we will be filling in the flood zone, we'll have to provide compensatory storage around the property to not increase. So we're not increasing the volume within the flood zone by cutting other areas outside the flood zone. So you'll see those areas in the lighter hashed areas here and here. By doing this cut, we won't be changing any drainage patterns. Everything will still continue to flow south through the backyard here and south through the front yard here. But we are just sort of creating a swale in those areas to keep the water moving, but also to remove earth within the flood zone to compensate for the earth that we'll be adding around the property to lift the house outside the flood zone. As Jeremy also mentioned, there's no work happening to the house. All that will be happening really on the property is regrading the driveway to meet the new garage elevation, which will just require a little bit filling as well. There's no increase in impervious area, so there's no increase in any drainage leaving the property that will result in any stormwater management systems required. We have erosion controls shown around the property in the form of a silt fence to protect Holmes Ave and neighboring properties to the south while this earth is being moved. The total earth being brought around the house is about 22 cubic yards, and the volume that we're removing for compensatory storage is about 23 yards. So very balanced. There shouldn't have to be any material brought into the site. It should be able to be taken from the site and moved around. In this area here on the southern side of the house, we'll also have to raise it to the 39.4. We're showing a maximum 1 foot tall retaining wall over here along the property line. Honestly, it probably won't even be that tall, probably more like 6 to 8 inches, just to get to that to support that elevation of 39.4 in the close proximity. Catch basin here will be protected during construction with a silt sack to prevent any sediment from entering the town's drainage system. The house is currently attached or served by municipal water and sewer. That will remain as is, and that will not be disturbed as part of this project. That pretty much touches on everything I have to say about it. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
No, thank you. That's very thorough. We get excited when people get their houses out of flood zones. That's a good thing. And we also know that you're not going to disturb the neighbor's property at all. Does any commissioners have any questions for this applicant or the commercial engineer? George,
what is the source of potential flooding? The Stony Brook?
To my answer,
that's what I was curious about.
Isn't that the street that we put in Stewart a couple of years ago? It's Intervale Valley, all that stuff. That guy got hammered. It was down the road.
I believe it's the Norotan River.
Yeah.
Oh, the Norotan River? Oh, yeah. Oh. Okay. That'd be a heck of a flood.
So I don't have that information. I just have what the elevation is through the property.
Well, that's
I'm not sitting there going, there's going to be a flood at 39 feet. All right.
That's the fact.
Is FEMA going to require an elevation certificate on this, do you think?
So
I would say yeah.
I would say yeah. Okay.
You're gonna have to get a land. What's it called? LM.
Letter of map revision.
Yeah, you have to get an LMA.
Exactly. So the process is upon your approval, they'll move forward with the construction. Then they'll get an as-built survey that shows that all these elevations were done accordingly. I'm not sure if they would need the elevation certificate because the house isn't being touched. The first floor will remain as is, but we'll figure that out when we get to that point. But definitely an as-built survey will have to be provided to FEMA as part of the loan application.
Okay, great, thank you.
But he's gonna need there's no flood vents in this thing anymore, right?
It's out of the flood zone. We
Okay.
need flood vents.
Yeah, so I bet you if you get the letter of map revision, you don't need the elevation survey. Okay.
So,
Any other commissioners? have a quick-
I'm just actually gonna, I follow that mostly, but are you basically moving the flood zone?
What they do, Larry, is you lift actually the dirt out of the flood zone. So when you pull the new flood map, instead of being blue, that section, instead of being gray, that section's not gonna be blue. So that's what letter of map revision stands for. It's LMR. They revise the flood map for this property. I run it in business all the time. And you can see some plots were new, and in my world, they add 4 feet of height to get stuff out of the flood zone. And it makes the land worth from $400,000 an acre to $1 million an acre.
Wow.
This is up in the deal I just worked out.
So I'm just, and this is really just for my understanding, just because it kind of interests me. The elevation right now, you're in an AE 39.3.
Yep.
And the house is at 39.4. I'm reading it right.
So the house will be at 39.4. It just in this specific instance, it's not a lot of fill that's going to move them out of the flood zone. What they're going to do is put the fill around the house. Harry mentioned they're going to get a surveyor out there to show that, hey, this whole house is at 39.4, and the FEMA will hire an independent engineer to look at it. And if it checks out, they'll send a letter saying, basically, there's no flood zone on this property any longer.
And the insurance goes down.
And the insurance will go down.
Yeah.
Insurance goes to zero. So,
okay.
Okay. Any other commissioner have questions on this application? Does anyone from general public want to speak to the application? Is the person that came here
I don't
earlier?
see them.
Okay. With that said, I would entertain a motion to close this hearing. Do we have there we go. George Riley motion. Do I have a second? Jim Rand's a second. All those in favor of closing the hearing? Looks like it's 6-0. Great. Thank you, sir. We'll get to this in in a week or so, but April 6th.
Very good. Thank you all.
You're welcome, sir. All right, next. Amendments to special permit application number 248A is an Apple, Baywater Road Associates 2, LLC, Parlor Wine and Pizza, 1020 Boston Post Road. Proposal to utilize a portion of the basement area for food preparation, allow live music within the restaurant. The subject property is located on the northwest side of Boston Post Road, approximately 180 feet northeast of its intersection with Corbin Drive, and is shown on Assessor's map number 72 as lot number 12 in the CBD Zone. This was the former Holy Moly restaurant, and then I went to another place that was a tequila bar, and now they want to make pizza and wine there.
Right. The original P&Z approval had 2 conditions in it. One was no food prep in the basement. It had a number of conditions, but one of them was no food prep in the basement, and the other was no live entertainment. And obviously, David Genovese built the building, and he was here when that was approved. And what they're doing is they have a new tenant come in, Parlor Wine and Pizza, that wants to do some pizza prep in the basement, pizza dough prep, and have some live entertainment. And the health department has actually looked at this, and they're okay with the pizza prep in the basement.
We approved that over at Driftwood Diner, right?
Yep, Driftwood Diner. There were a couple places that have been with limited work. In this case, there's really they're parking exempt, so the parking wouldn't come into play. And it's just a small area of the basement. I don't remember the exact square footage, Mr. Genovese, but it's not a big area in the basement that's being used by the pizza makers.
And this guy's all over Instagram already. Mr. Genovese, I think this is your application. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission tonight.
Thank
Are you going to
Nice to
present it?
meet all of you. Nice to meet all of you. I'm sure you're getting very tired of me. I'll try to be super brief. I'm going to be very brief. I'm David Genovese from Baywater Post Road Associates 2. We're the developer and owner of the building. With me tonight is my team, Sonia Tralson, and then also Tim Labant from Parlor Pizza and Wine. Tim's a well-regarded, very, very well-regarded chef regionally. He founded the Schoolhouse up in Cannondale, if any of you's been there. And then later, more recently, started Parlor Pizza and Wine in Wilton. We'd been talking to Tim for a while about coming to Darien, and we came to an agreement a few months ago. And he dramatically changed the kitchen in the restaurant in that he took out a lot of the equipment that was there and put 2 pizza ovens, given the volume that he expects to do in the store or in the restaurant. And so and these pizza ovens are imported from Italy. They're pretty significant in size. So he wanted to see if we could dedicate a small portion of the basement, which they use, to literally just make pizza dough. So it's not to prepare the pizzas. It's just to actually make the dough that he uses for the pizza making. There's already storage down there, wine storage, food storage, refrigerators, freezers, and a small office. And that's really the nature of the request. As it relates to the pizza dough making in the basement, Tim did review it with the health department. They've signed off on the idea. He has to add a sink and do some other work to it, which he could elaborate upon. And then as to the live music, it's not the intention to have live music often. But actually, when Tim went to go renew or transfer the liquor license that Baldanza had actually included in their liquor license. This is how this came up. They had included in their liquor license the possibility of live music. They never told us, they never actually did it. Tim just tried to assign the license, and the Liquor Commission pushed it to P&Z to confirm, as they always do, that everything was okay. I think this got missed somehow in the last transfer, but Dave Keating doesn't miss much, and basically called and said, hey, that wasn't approved in the original zoning application. But again, it's not the intent to do it often. I think Tim would just like to have the option to have a guitarist or a musician play from time to time. And again, he can elaborate, but we're okay with it as the property owner. And really, those are the only 2 changes. Tim's close to being open. The fire marshal, the health department, the building inspectors have been through everything. He's just now trying to round out his team and trying to open in the next week or 2.
His sign's up already.
That's a temporary sign. We did get ARB approval a week or so.
Sir, we see your plan where you show the basement, where it goes from page 1 to page 2. I see where you're putting in a sink and a prep table, a prep utility sink and a hand sink, and then a prep table. So welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission. If you want to explain anything in addition, your landlord kind of took care of it, but welcome. This is your 3 minutes of fame.
All right, thank you so much. Well, I appreciate the time. Yeah, I mean, I think David kind of summed it up pretty well, and Mr. Ginsburg did as well. It really is just dough prep, and it's kind of, for me, it was partially as a chef. It's partially for the staff who's going to be there. The flour comes in, we accept delivery. It gets taken down to the basement, and then we would make the dough and put it into the walk-in that's already in the basement. Otherwise they have to kind of bring the flour back upstairs and then make the dough and then bring it back a second time and then bring it back up a 4th time to kind of cook it. So it's sort of like it'll really simplify, the efficiency of the establishment. It'll help kind of cut down on people hauling around 50-pound bags of flour up and down
those
stairs.
bags of flour are pretty heavy, aren't they?
Yeah. 55 pounds a bag. And to do it like multiple times, just, it's kind of like a overuse injury waiting to happen.
Okay.
But
I understand that. With regards to the music, do you envision that being inside in the winter and outside in the summer if your landlord approves, or once a month, once a year?
Yeah, I mean, it really.
That do have music.
Yeah, I think David also kind of summed that up. I don't have any huge desire to, you know, throw like a rock concert, but like maybe a pianist or a guitarist or something, you know, on the patio in the summer, or, you know, just something to do every now and again. I don't have any musician friends or family members, so it would be trying to hire somebody if I was going to do it. Yeah. So
I'll find one. Okay. It seems we already approved this once for Driftwood Diner. Does any commissioner have any questions for this applicant? Kara's saying no, Janet's saying no, George's saying no,
Jim, no.
Jim's
Larry,
saying no. Larry, wow, everyone's speechless.
And no public here, so.
Any
I think you're
public
just
speechless?
tired.
I think Lisa Atwell may want to talk to this one. Here. All right. With that said, I would entertain a motion to close this hearing. As Karis made the motion, Jim second, all's in favor. Jen's got her hand up.
Okay, we'll put this on, David, we'll put this on for decision at our next meeting, April 6th.
Great, thank
Sounds
you
like
so much.
got your kids
Thank
in
you.
the basement, Tim.
So we'll see.
thank you very much.
But that's the
luck.
goal, April 6th.
All right, next item up for bid. We're gonna change the agenda.
Yeah, we have to make a motion to modify the agenda.
Can someone make a motion to modify the agenda?
And Fred, can
Motion
you?
to modify the
Sorry.
agenda?
Janda made the motion. Is there a second? George Riley's a second. So moved. We have to, all in favor? We're gonna move the agenda.
And you can read that item.
Okay, we're gonna add something to the agenda and delete something to the agenda. We're gonna add amendment to special permit application number 202 C as in Charlie, site plan, number, site and access site plan, 980 Post Road Associates LLC, Bodega Taco Bar, 1980 Boston Post Road. Proposal to create a new temporary outdoor dining area at the east side of Bodega Restaurant within the Center Street Municipal parking lot. This will result in the temporary elimination of 7 parking spaces. The subject property is located on the northeast side of Boston Post Road, approximately 175 feet south of its intersection with Center Street, and is shown on Assessor map number 72 as lot number 6 in the CBD zone. Sincerely, Jim Rand, Secretary.
Okay, let me explain how this works. You see on the printed agenda that we put 1020 Post Road on the agenda for the outdoor dining patio. The commission approved that a few weeks ago. We inadvertently left off 980 Post Road, which is Bodega Taco's outdoor seating in an area behind their building next to Upper Crust Bagel. I emailed to the commission members earlier today the ARB letter positive report on the outdoor seating area that Mr. Fontana is proposing.
This is just an extension of last summer, right?
It's a little different dynamic. I think last summer Mario put up a tent. This time there will be no tent. It's going to be a couch with some umbrellas. The area behind Upper Crust Bagels will be a tent, and that's kind of a quieter area, which Upper Crust uses during the day and Mario uses more in the evenings. So that will be a tented area behind Upper Crust Bagels. Mario's going to have a more open area with black and white striped umbrellas, and occasionally there'll be heaters out there. Correct, Mario, stop me if I'm wrong. And Jersey barriers. There's going to be tentatively one-way traffic flow like we did last summer during COVID. Again, this is similar to what the commission handled last year rather, during COVID. Mario's going to take the 4 spaces closest to his building, his space. The 4 spaces next to him will be left for the Goose, who's the commission's going to look at their request on April 6th for a tent and for them to put outdoor dining there. The Board of Selectmen, who's the property owner in this case, the Center Street parking lot, looked at this 2 separate nights. Mr. Genovese and I went to the Board of Selectmen, most recently this last night, I think it was last night, David, where the Board of Selectmen did authorize use of that portion of the Center Street parking lot for Mario and his outdoor dining, and potentially the Goose and their outdoor dining for another year. They were very impressed with what was put together. A lot of time and effort was spent coming up with a very nice design. As Mario said last night, it's a good way to put it. He wants to make it feel like you're not sitting in the middle of a parking lot, a very welcoming feel, comfortable, that you wouldn't know that you're in a safe place in the parking lot. So David, did I leave anything out?
No, I think you've really covered it. And you know, we last year it was about survival, and this year it's about, you know, kind of recovering from the trauma of coronavirus for these restaurants, and then, you know, trying to give people a great experience. And you know, Mario and his team do a phenomenal job at Bodega, and you know, have come up with a great design inspired by a lot of what we've seen on Greenwich Avenue and in Manhattan and everywhere, as people kind of have come to a greater appreciation of outdoor dining. So, you know, the Board of Selectmen approved the proposal, and the Architectural Review Board approved the proposal as well. And we didn't want to come to you until we were sure the Board of Selectmen would approve it, because this is town property. So, but that was done, that was accomplished last night. We're happy to answer.
I give the commission a heads up to this, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, and we did it. But it seems pretty straightforward.
Right, the police commission has no issues. The health department
Public
says,
health.
yeah, as long as you follow the COVID rules and there's no food prep outside, they're okay. The fire marshal has said that, you know, we want it to be safe. So Mario's going to work on a Jersey barrier, but kind of disguising the Jersey barrier. Mario's already gotten the authorization from liquor control on this. So Mario's done a lot of legwork here to make it work. It's going to look great, and we wish him a lot of success.
Mario, you want your 3 minutes of fame? Turn your microphone on.
My microphone is on, and thank you for your time.
You're
And
welcome, sir.
we're looking for waiters and bartenders and hostesses. So please come on down. But we really appreciate you considering this application. I think it's going to be a great addition to Darien this summer. We're very excited and really itching to get going with this. So thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you for pushing through the last 12 months.
Right, the selectmen, I think, have authorized use of the parking lot till October 31st, just for the record.
Fantastic, great. Does Lisa Atwell have anything to say, David? Are we done? She's the only person from the public that's not here.
We're good.
All right, with that said, anyone from the general public want to speak to this application? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close this hearing. That's Karen Gately and Jim Rand seconded. Sorry, Jen, you're too late. All those in favor? We will debate this.
Commission will decide it next meeting, April 6th.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you all so much, and thanks again for all your hard work. You guys are just, what a series of meetings you've had. Thank you so much.
Nothing in, man. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Good luck, Mario. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Bye. Bye-bye.
All right, moving on. It ends our public hearing, right?
Yep.
Public hearing's over. The last item, as we talked about when we amended the agenda, got dropped.
Yep.
It is now 11:45. I would like to punt the approval of minutes to next week again.
Yep.
Because I didn't look at them.
April 6th.
The chairman's report is up to me. I have one just really quick comment. And I need your help on it. So this is a little bit of a homework assignment. This virtual meeting stuff is going to end at some point in time because the governor's thing's going to end. I think certain people in the commission like the virtual meeting. I also think our applicants like the virtual meeting. So I talked to Selectman Stevenson about it. When this thing ends, we're all supposed to be back in room 206, right? The way we used to be in the old days. What my request of you guys is, I'm trying to put together a proposal to give to the selectmen a hybrid model, where if Jim Rand wants to stay home or be a commissioner from Florida, he can be a commissioner from Florida. You know, if an applicant wants to come in or the general public wants to be on Zoom, we can do it that way. The way I look at it, I would like to get back into 213 and put flat screens up on the wall to get us out of the dark ages so we don't do stuff on easel anymore. That's a budgetary question. Supposedly there is money in the budget to do stuff like that, and they're gonna start to renovate that room. But if anybody has any best practices, ideas of how to become a hybrid meeting that we can propose to the selectmen and they can shove it up, move it up the ladder, that's great. I did speak to some other professionals, specifically Craig Flaherty, who does a lot of presentations at other towns. He says Norwalk has a fantastic setup, the way they do it.
They do have a good setup.
And he also likes the way Greenwich does it,
Greenwich has a good setup.
and somebody else.
Keenan has good rooms.
What are they, Steve? So could you describe them for a second? Because I don't know
What I'm after is
what does Norwalk do and what does Greenwich do that you like? Because I just want to know.
Norwalk has four flat screen TVs, 2 that face the commission and 2 that face the audience. So instead of having the old, when they put the 2x4 pads on the easel and the guy points it with the laser pointer, it's now up on the screen and everybody can see it, and you can also do it virtually so TV 79 can get it. That's half of the project, half of the issue. The other issue is, can attendees, like the 150 people that come to our meeting, or 50 people that come to our meeting, can they all log in and be on a TV or something like that? That's the hybrid part. I'm trying to get us out of the dark ages, because none of these guys really do easels anymore, where they put the survey on hardboard. It's all electronic. They just email it to you, and if the guy makes a change, he makes a change. Like Doug DeVesta made a change 2 hours ago with the perk test, sent it in, he can put up on a flat screen and there. So that's what Norwalk does. Nobody, to my knowledge at this point, has attendees of meetings in a virtual setting, right? You can watch it on TV. So it's a 2-step process. And this is going back, and I'm wasting a little bit of time, but going back 14 years ago, there was a guy who was on the Board of Finance that bought a house in Palm Springs. He was the chairman or the vice chairman of the Board of Finance. He wanted to be able to go in to his meetings by speakerphone 14 years ago. He got turned down locally because it wasn't statutory. So there's a little bit of a question. If you want to be a commissioner, you should be in attendance, but can the applicants come in from out of town? I don't know. That's why I'm calling it a hybrid model. But if anybody has any good ideas that they spoke to other people and how we can, get over this, like George Riley looks like he's got a great setup at his home office or his office. He'd rather be more comfortable there than coming in to sit next to me. We just have an idea how we can make it legal.
More
And how it works. Yeah, I mean, you guys, as soon as this TV shuts off, you guys can go to bed. I got to drive home. I don't really care, but that's what I'm kind of looking for. And I'd like your ideas on it. And because I think I have to present it to the Board of Selectmen and say this one. And we're not the only commission in town. I mean, I bet you the RTM wants to do it. I bet you the ZBA wants to do it. The Board of Finance wants to do it. But we have the most meetings and the most attendees. Absent the Board of Education, they're a whole different kettle of fish. So that's if you guys come up with ideas, that's my homework problem for you, that's what's on the agenda. The other item is legislative update. For everyone's knowledge, we did send our testimony letters to our delegation. The one from March 2nd, it was sent out on Friday. We got responses back from Bob Duff. He said, Bob Duff said he's going to read everything and get back to us. We also got a really nice note back from Matt Blumenthal that said great stuff, and they're all directed to Fred, but they got forwarded to us. He wants to look at it, and Terry Wood also sent back another one. To this point today, we didn't get anything back from Patricia Billy Miller yet, but we're going to reach out to her again and say, hey, did you get our letter? Any comments? We'd love to invite you to town and come represent us. So that's where we are on that one. I think we're sending out the 1024 testimony to on cover letter to our delegation.
I emailed them to the commission today, the two draft letters.
I'm talking about 1024 first.
Oh, 1024. I think that Fred already sent that one out.
Did you?
We can put together a cover letter to make sure that gets sent out to Bob Duff, Matt Blumenthal, Terry Wood, and the new senator. I forget her name.
Patricia Billy Miller. Yeah.
There you go. We can put together something similar to what we did for the testimony that was put together on 804.
And the other three. That's great. Thank you. I thought we did that right. Last night, I testified's the wrong word, but I was invited to the Board of Selectmen meeting to speak about the testimony letters that we already submitted. I told them that we submitted it, that the letters were penned under my name. It was a timely issue. Staff really worked hard to get them done. It's something that we started this process back in, my first look at it was July of 2020. When Jeremy and I first started it, then we constituted the subcommittee and we had all the other stuff. And so we didn't think about this and come up with answers overnight. And that, I think my exact words, that the 2 letters that I submitted as testimony had the full backing of the commission. Everyone was CC'd on it, would have had a little bit of comments. We did send 1024 in advance. You know, we sent that out, and then I think we talked about it on the Tuesday after the fact. What I wanted to do is, there's 2 other bills that came out, and I call them, subset bills. 1024 is 27 pages. Then there's another one called 1026, which is Senate Bill 1026, an act concerning training of certain planning and zoning officials. I think this letter wants to support it. That we think is a good idea. Does anybody think that's not a good idea for commissioners to get trained?
No.
Okay, so Fred and Jeremy drafted a letter today, again under my signature.
Stu, I'm just going to jump in. I don't think training is a bad idea, but I wouldn't want Hartford telling me what the training has to be. Right.
Okay,
in other words, there were some of those sessions of that training we did the other week. Those weren't training sessions. Those were political speeches.
And
right?
It was a little bit of advertising.
That were just over the top. And what I wouldn't want is a scenario where they're saying, okay, you have to go to this training, and it's really pushing up an agenda, not information that we could use to do our jobs better.
Relative to that question, when Jen and I are both brokers in the state of Connecticut, we have to, I think is it 8 hours every 2 years, or is it 22 hours? It's like 22
I have
hours.
more because I'm dually licensed. Oh, you probably the same. I think it was 12.
I think it's
12
12. Yeah, it's 3 hours, 4 days. As part of that training, it's required to take the 1 hour module of fair housing, which goes into the fair housing stuff. So you have to take, 20, I think it's 11 hours of anything, but 1 hour of fair housing. So what we did, and these guys got this letter already?
I think that was emailed out earlier today to the commission for proofing and revising.
So what I didn't hear is, I think they wanted 8 hours every year or 6 hours every year.
4 hours annually.
They wanted 4 hours annually. Yeah, they wanted 4 hours annually. What I asked these guys to write is do 6 hours every 2 years, so it goes with the municipal election cycles. Right?
I'm not going to be comfortable. Like, it's one thing if you're a broker, that's your profession regulated by the state. I'm elected.
Okay.
Right. What happens to, we had an issue. I was seated, but there wasn't any training for a year and a half. Just wasn't any available. Right. I mean, could there be something in there that fouls things up? I just think it disenfranchises the people that vote for us if we have to follow any mandates on anything other than just using what we believe is the acting in the best interest of the residents of our town and do what we're sent to do. And certainly, I'm nothing opposed to education per se. It's just that it's some things get handcuffs. The lawyers on the call here can be like, sometimes there's a gray area about what this is, what that is. And, next thing you know, someone wants to do a development and, hey, wait, we might have a way to get 3 votes off the table because they didn't do the right thing. And all of a sudden, I can see it going in a lot of different directions that, frankly, I would like to stick with the idea, local decisions. These are great ideas, but local control is local control, and we should decide what we will.
Okay. That's why we're having this discussion. This letter hasn't gone anywhere. It's not going to go anywhere unless you guys say to go anywhere. But let me, if I could just read it out loud, it says,
Sure.
what is it? We support the requirement for training. The next paragraph, the bill as proposed require land use boards to complete not less than 4 hours of training annually. We do support the requirement for training. However, it's best to require 6 hours every 2 years. This would be better coordinated with the elected officials we just talked about. It will also allow us to take advantage of the fantastic 6+ hour CT bar land use training offered every 2 years. The 2-year training requirement is already in place for real estate brokers, AICPI certified planners, and many other certified licensed professionals.
I mean,
we
you're gonna
agree
have
with the
that.
concept.
I mean,
If we don't agree with this concept, then we don't.
I don't think we should cite specific requirements or professional continuing education, because many professions, whether it be financial services brokers, lawyers, doctors, accountants, you know, like, but have professional licensing. So I think highlighting just brokers, you know, many professional architects, all sorts of professionals. And I think that does disenfranchise stay-at-home mothers or retired people who, you know, may not have, you know, the benefit of having an income and having, you know, that
Let's answer the first question first. Let's answer the first question first. The first question is, collectively, it's the 6 of us. Do we support training? It sounds like Larry's a no.
I support training, but not necessarily the CT bar training. I thought the con training that we all attended was significantly better. I think there should be choice. And so I think, right, elected volunteers should have a choice as to what they think might be the most valuable and useful education for them. So the CT bar one was very informative for me on a professional level, but I thought what I learned and got a lot more value from as a planning and zoning commissioner was the Yukon one, because it spoke to and educated me on things that I am not as familiar with, such as rain gardens and Cultex systems and different things about stormwater management systems. So I think they're like sort of similar to Larry's point, is that there should be choice, and it shouldn't be a one size fits all. It must be the CT bar or it must be this.
I understand, but I'm trying to see what the other 6 people want.
I'll stop talking.
Thanks. George, do you support training or not training?
Night, everyone.
I have no problem with training in principle. I can't think of a penalty or an enforcement mechanism that I'd be comfortable with, as Larry was suggesting. We are elected officials. And I'm used to, as Kara is, you know, we're on the honor system. For lawyers, we have a certain number of hours a year, but we have to certify it once a year. And so a lawyer certifying something that, you know, that carries weight. So anyway, I don't know how you'd enforce it. What are you going to, maybe we have to pay some money into the housing, the fair housing fund or something. I don't know. I don't think we can get kicked out of our position. So anyway, in theory, it's fine. In practice, could be tough.
Okay, so Jen, what about you?
I support training, but I agree with George and Larry that one, it has to be equitable, right? So I spend a lot of time, right, in my public service role, and to ask for me to miss work, right? Like a Saturday for me is a work day. So it's not, I'm missing money, right? And I am the only breadwinner in my household. So I think it has to be equitable. And I think we have to make sure we're thinking about that for the greater good, not just for us. And 2, I don't really feel comfortable paying something in lieu of, like, because of the equitable part of it. And I don't know, I think it's tricky. I think what Larry brought up is this, it's a little bit tricky. I love education. Maybe if it's an online course, like in real estate, we can take an online course and do it at our leisure. I'm totally cool with that. I mean, and I also think one we took there was so much stuff that was like a political, there was just so much in it that I didn't find very useful and was sort of a waste of my time. And again, it was wasting time that I could have been working. So.
Right, so I'm hearing from 3 people that we do not support the 1026 bill. And even if we did support it, this letter's got to be more than 1 page. Because, I mean, as a broker and a realtor, we're not on the honor system. You have to send in your certificates that are stamped and this, and you get audited. And if you don't get audited, you lose your license, right? You lawyers are not on the honor system. And I agree with Larry. For argument's sakes, if somebody finds out that Larry Warble didn't do his 6 hours of training every 2 years, is that appealed in court? You know, it's a good point. I never thought of that. That's why we're having this conversation. Jim,
Does
any,
the bill have an enforcement mechanism?
that bill is actually short.
Yeah, one bill had enforcement, which was the fact that the commissioner could not sit on applications till they get trained, which was, we talked about that when we discussed the bill, is, you know, you all have personal lives, and if one person can't serve till they track down some kind of training session, that really hamstrings the rest of you. And that was the point that was made is, you know, they're not training experts.
There's too much flow to this. All right, well, this one's punted. We're not doing that one.
Postpone. Yep.
Hey, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would just add that there's a couple of bills that put forth this training, right? So 1024.
I was just trying to stick out the one that I thought we might support, but you guys are right. There's too many unknowns. Because the training provisions inside 1024, and we already said no to 1024, so you said no to this. But if you like a piece of 1024, that's fine.
Yeah.
Then the second
1024 goes with 6 hours. 1026 goes with 4 hours.
Yeah, I got it. It's 11 o'clock. I got it. Then another, we wrote another that we oppose 1027, which is an act concerning accessory dwelling units and housing regulations. That bill specifically states that 1027, you can have accessory dwelling units as of right in the entire town. I mean, I read it backwards and forwards yesterday, and I had lines on it. So for argument's sake, the thing is, if 1024 dies and 1027 comes out of committee and becomes live, that's going to hit the floor. So if 1024 dies and 1027 stays alive, then accessory dwelling is still a hot banana. I think accessory dwelling units is something our town wants. I know at one application, Jen was adamant about allowing this guy to have a second house on there and be able to put an accessory dwelling unit in there. And we said no. And we said we would bring it up again. What I don't want is as of right blanketed across the entire town, and we never see it. Because if somebody wants to put, accessory dwelling unit on Hollow Tree Ridge Road and there's no parking, or a 1/5 acre zone and there's no parking, we would never see that. And you're on a main road, you'd never see it. So that's where my problem is with that. We will vote later. We're going to see it later this year. We talked about it in the summer, I think. We're going to take up accessory dwelling units, and we'll debate it as a commission, but we'll do it the way we want to do it, not the way someone is going to mandate it to us. Any comments on that? Okay. You're okay? Did everybody have a chance to look at this letter? Everyone had a chance to look at the letter? Larry, your lights on? You're okay?
Yeah, you know what? I haven't had a chance to look at it. I'm scanning it right now, but
it's a draft.
I agree with you in principle, so I assume the letter says what you said.
It says we note that partial ongoing has the planning zone is exploring the opportunities to permit ADUs within certain residential areas of the town where appropriate bulk dimensions are adhered to there, and safety concerns. One of the things that came out last night.
As I'm scanning through it, I would love it to just be, and also to be consistent with our previous letters, to maybe have a paragraph, a sentence or a paragraph, once again highlighting our strong feeling that for local control. These may be great ideas in principle, but they shouldn't come out of Hartford. They should, local control is important, and we want local control over our town.
I think what we were also pressing is one side's doesn't necessarily fit all.
Same point. Yeah, exactly. I would just like to keep that in the conversation. So as we
You got that?
publish this and however, those
You got
points are
that,
then
Fred?
made again.
That's fine, which is, I fully agree with you. I mean, I think the one example I gave last night was if you have a 2-acre piece of land that's on sewer and somebody wants to put an ADU in the way back corner of the property, either you got to run the sewer line from the house or you got to put a septic back there. And for argument's sake, say that you have a pool house and the house sits up here and the pool house is down low and you put a kitchen in there, you've got to pump the water and the sewage uphill to get to the main house. That means we have to have a generator there. You have to have all this other kind of stuff to get the sewage up the hill, or else you can put a septic tank down there. So then on a piece of property, you might have a sewer system for the main house and a septic system to the new house. And if it's in a CAM area, we should look at it. That's where it comes into play. If you just blanket it, we never look at it, and it just goes to the building department, we lose all local control. So that's why I asked these guys to rate this other. George, any questions?
I'm wondering, how do we get to a point where we can say affirmatively that we have either adopted the ADU provision or we are moving forward with it?
That's in here. That's in here, and we're
We're
already on
saying-
record saying, yeah. So we're
So
gonna
what's
do
our
our
next step to actually do that?
it's on our agenda for the summer. We're gonna look at there's 4 things we're looking at. One is dropping the minimum size of dwelling units, right, of
Yep,
apartments.
you'll see that hearing on that in April. Reducing parking requirements for multifamily housing, public hearing April 27th. Modifying inclusionary zoning, public hearing April 27th, very likely.
And then this is the 4th one.
Right, this is the 4th one, accessory dwelling units. I think that's gonna take a little longer. There's a little more meat on the bone for that one in terms of what we want to cover. We want to look at some other towns. So more likely the hearing on that might be July.
Yeah,
because the zoning regulation.
And by then we'll have a feel on what might or might not have passed in the legislature.
I mean, the ADU, I'm sorry, Larry, George, the ADU provision in this bill is a minimum size of 750 square feet. You know, my apartment in New York City was 832 square feet. My studio was 450. 750 square feet is pretty big.
Right.
You know, so even.
Steve, I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in. As I'm reading the letter, it actually states the Town of Darien Planning and Zoning Commission generally supports the legislation put forth. Like, I don't want things being misconstrued. Like all the conversation about ADUs is fine, but I'd prefer a letter that said local control. While we agree with some of the provisions that you're working on, we believe strongly that this should be local control. Our decision, not supporting a bill that takes the decision out of our hands.
Okay.
So maybe some wordsmithing or some editing on that.
Yeah, this is opposing 1027.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree. We need to take out that language because
it's right. It's opposing, but it says we generally support it.
Yeah, we don't generally.
You got this, Fred?
We'll rewrite them. We'll
Okay.
rewrite both of them.
Okay, so in concept, you like the idea of this letter, but we have to wordsmith it some more to make it more.
I think we have to wordsmith to make sure that we oppose the bill itself because we believe we're in a better position to make decisions about ADUs for Darien.
Okay, that's fine. So Fred, if you can redraft it tomorrow and then.
I don't know. Yeah,
All right, I mean, there's no real rush on my end, except when the hearings close. You have to get it in before the hearing. Do we know when the hearings close? All right, we'll look into it. If we can get it under the deadline with these guys' workload, we'll get it in. If we can't, we can't. Try.
And I would also like to say that I very much appreciate all the effort that went into making the letter too. Didn't mean to,
No, not at all. I mean, these guys are working on weekends. I mean, I was in contact with Jeremy last week when he was on vacation. You know, and I sent him an email and he texts back. I'm like, you're on vacation, dude. Anyway, that's it, right? We're done. Aren't we? We're done. Next meeting is April 6th, and we have vacation, spring week off, then we're April 20th. With that said, I entertain a motion to close. Jim Rand's in there. I have second, Jen. Thank you. All in favor? Good night, everybody.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry for the delay.